Chapter 443. In the Tianji Hall, Lu Yi placed his hand on the Tianji pillar and connected his mind to it. When he was in the spirit stream stage, he could only enter the spirit stream battlefield by connecting his mind to the Tianji pillar. But now, he was in the Cloud River stage, so he had another choice. He could enter the spirit stream battlefield, but he had to pay 3,000 merit points. And after entering the spirit stream battlefield, his strength would be suppressed to the level of Tianjiu, returning to his previous state. A Cloud River tier cultivator would have to pay 3,000 merit points to forcefully enter the spirit stream battlefield. If it was a true lake tier cultivator, the required merit points would be even higher. The higher one's cultivation level, the higher the price. Thus, high-level cultivators wouldn't forcefully enter a battlefield that didn't belong to them. Of course, he would not enter the spirit stream battlefield. He had to enter the Cloud River battlefield now. After making his choice, he did not enter immediately. Because the Cloud River battlefield was not like the spirit stream battlefield, the sects did not have encampments there. Thus, there were several ways to enter the Cloud River battlefield. The first was to appear at a random location in the Cloud River battlefield. If you were lucky, you would be safe. If you were unlucky, you would appear at a place where many enemies gathered or in the territory of powerful demonic beasts. Then, a battle would break out. If you were not strong enough, you could be killed. The second was to teleport. There were spiritual lands in the Cloud River battlefield. The spiritual lands were rich in spiritual energy, and most of the spiritual lands had Tianji pillars. If a cultivator could leave a mark on the Tianji pillar in the spiritual land, they could be directly teleported to the spiritual land. This method of teleportation was suitable for cultivators with spiritual lands. Lu Yi had never entered the Cloud River battlefield, so he naturally did not have any spiritual lands. Only the third method was suitable for him. This was also a method of teleportation, but there were many locations to choose from. The sects did not have encampments in the Cloud River battlefield, but there were many Tianji business unions. These Tianji business unions were scattered all over the Cloud River battlefield, providing cultivators with supplies and places to rest. Each Tianji business union had its own Tianji pillar. No matter which camp the cultivators were from, they could use these Tianji pillars to enter and exit the Cloud River battlefield. It could be said that the Cloud River battlefield was the most chaotic place around the Tianji business unions. In the Tianji Hall, Lu Yi closed his eyes. His mind was connected to the Tianji pillar. Light dots appeared in his mind. Each light dot represented a Tianji business union. He could choose any one of them and use the Tianji pillar to teleport to that Tianji business union. How to choose was a problem. Shui Yuan told him to look for 4th senior brother Li Baxian after he entered the Cloudy River battlefield. However, Lu Yi wanted to find giant armor first. This big guy had a slow personality and had entered the Cloudy River battlefield a few months earlier than him. He did not know where he was now, nor did he know if he had suffered any losses. There were over 1,000 dots of light that appeared in his mind. One could imagine how vast the Cloudy River battlefield was. Compared to the Spirit Stream battlefield, the Cloud River battlefield was several times larger. After all, once a cultivator reached the Cloud River tier, they would be able to fly. If the battlefield was too small, the cultivators from the 9 states wouldn't be able to display their full power. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi chose a light spot in the middle. This way, no matter where giant armor was, he would not be too far away from it. Hu Po, are you ready? Lu Yi asked softly. Hu Po, who was crouching on his shoulder, whimpered in response. Lu Yi smiled, and with a thought, he felt a slight sense of weightlessness in the next instant. This feeling came quickly and left quickly. When he opened his eyes again, he had already appeared in a large hall. Not far from him, a cultivator opened his eyes at the same time. Obviously, he had also just been transported over from the 9 state. He had made the same choice as Lu Yi, and had come to the Tianji Business Alliance. However, they had no intention of communicating with each other. Lu Yi raised his hand again and pressed it against the Tianji pillar, trying to be transported back to the 9 states. In the end, the Tianji pillar replied that a large amount of merit points would be deducted from him. He immediately understood that the information he had heard before was correct. Cultivators who entered the Cloudy River battlefield could not leave the Cloudy River battlefield at will within a month unless they paid enough merit points. Although this was his first time entering the Cloudy River battlefield, he had more or less obtained some information about it through various channels. It was just that it was not systematic and comprehensive. Lu Yi did not know why there was such a rule. He only guessed that the Tianji pillar's teleportation had a cost. In order to prevent bored cultivators from constantly entering and leaving the 9 states and the Cloudy River battlefield, such a restriction was put in place. The cultivator who had appeared with him had already turned and left. Lu Yi did not stay for long either. He followed closely behind that person and walked out of the hall. A noisy atmosphere rushed towards him. This was the Tianji Business Alliance, so naturally, there would be a large number of cultivators coming and going. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the battlefield imprint. He tried to contact 4th senior brother. He was prepared to greet him and tell him that he had come to the Cloudy River battlefield. However, to his surprise, the message did not get out. 4th senior brother's imprint did not disappear. This meant that he was safe. If the message could not get out, then there was only one possibility. 4th senior brother was not in the same world as him. He then tried to contact Feng Yuechan. The situation was the same. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan had always been inseparable. If one of them could not be contacted, then the other definitely could not be contacted. Lu Yi sent a message to Giant Armor. This time, the message got out. Giant Armor quickly replied. The two of them conversed for a while, and Lu Yi frowned. This was because Giant Armor did not know where he was, and Lu Yi did not know where he was either. He could only tell Giant Armor to find a heavenly secret business alliance and buy a 10-point map before ending their conversation. After finding a manager of the business alliance, Lu Yi spent some spirit stones to buy the 10 points map and all kinds of basic information about the Cloudy River battlefield. What shocked Lu Yi was that the manager of the business alliance was only at the spirit stream realm. Perhaps only the Tianji Business Alliance could have a spirit stream realm cultivator appear in the Cloudy River battlefield. This made Lu Yi feel that the Tianji Business Alliance was not simple. Sitting in the room, Lu Yi checked the 10 points map. After confirming his current location, he checked the information again. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi put down the jade slip in his hand and digested the information he had obtained. Compared to the Spirit Stream battlefield, the situation in the Cloudy River battlefield was undoubtedly much more complicated. The competition was also much greater. Here, the cultivators did not only compete with people from opposing factions. There were also cultivators from the same faction. However, as long as one had enough strength, one's cultivation could rise very quickly here. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, each sect had their own base. The density of the heaven and earth spirit chi in the base was closely related to the blessings they bought. The more blessings they bought, the denser the heaven and earth spirit chi, and the faster the disciples' cultivation progress. However, there were no bases in the Cloudy River battlefield. There were only spiritual lands. The so-called spiritual lands were places where the heaven and earth spirit chi gathered. Looking at the entire Cloudy River battlefield, the average density of the heaven and earth spirit chi was only equivalent to the outer regions of the Spirit Stream battlefield. This kind of cultivation environment was not very helpful for Spirit Stream realm cultivators, let alone Cloud River realm cultivators. If one really cultivated in this kind of environment, the efficiency would undoubtedly be very low. Thus, spiritual lands were places that cultivators sought after. Spiritual lands were similar to the bases of the Spirit Stream battlefield. The heaven and earth spirit chi inside was much denser than in the outer regions. However, spiritual lands were not occupied by sections. Perhaps 3 to 5 friends would gather to occupy them, or perhaps 10 to 20 people. In general, the number of cultivators that could be accommodated in a spiritual land would not be too high. That was because the more people there were, the less heaven and earth spirit chi there could be. Spiritual lands were divided into 4 grades: A, B, C, and D. Grade A was the highest, and D grade was the lowest. The higher the grade of the spiritual lands, the denser the heaven and earth spirit chi. Cultivators who cultivated there would be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Thus, in the Cloudy River battlefield, there would often be cases of cultivators gathering to attack and seize the spiritual lands of others. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, attacking and seizing the base of a sect was not an easy task. Once the defensive formation was activated, it was basically impregnable. That was because the power that a Spirit Stream realm cultivator could display was limited, and it would be difficult for them to break through the defenses of the formation, unless they had methods like Lu Yi to break through the formation. But when cultivators reached the Cloud River tier, things were different. Their power would increase greatly, and their methods would also increase. In this way, even if they set up a defensive formation after seizing the spiritual lands, they would not necessarily be safe. In general, there were very few people who could occupy the various spiritual lands of the Cloudy River battlefield for long periods of time. Basically, it was a matter of people coming and going. Moreover, some spiritual lands did not exist for long periods of time. Perhaps today, the area was an A-grade spiritual land, but tomorrow, the spiritual chi would suddenly disappear, and it would lose the right to be a spiritual land. Or perhaps a certain area would suddenly gather heaven and earth spirit chi, and turn from an ordinary wilderness into a spiritual land. This was also a common occurrence. The Cloudy River battlefield was vast, and there were countless spiritual lands. However, there would always be some cultivators who did not have the power to seize the spiritual lands of others. How could they cultivate if they only relied on taking spiritual pills? The efficiency was too low. So, in the Cloudy River battlefield, aside from seizing spiritual lands and seizing a mountain to cultivate, there was another method: seizing the spiritual lots. In the entire Cloudy River battlefield, at any place, at any time, there could be spiritual lots descending from the sky. Spiritual lots were divided into 5 colors: white, green, blue, purple, and gold. White was the worst, and gold was the best. When the spiritual lots descended from the sky, basically everyone within 100 miles could see them clearly. The cultivators who seized the spiritual lots only needed to find a safe place and crush the spiritual lot. Then, a large amount of heaven and earth spirit chi would be produced for the cultivator to use for cultivation. Up until now, no one knew where these spiritual lots came from. They only speculated that they were bestowed by the heavens. Every day, a large number of spiritual lots would appear all over the Cloudy River battlefield, and countless cultivators would benefit from it. However, seizing the spiritual lots was not easy. This was because every time the spiritual lots appeared, there would be many cultivators fighting for them. To seize the spiritual lots, not only did it depend on one's eyesight and speed, it also depended on one's power. If one was strong enough, one would naturally seize the golden spiritual lot. If one was not strong enough, one could only seize the white spiritual lot. So, in the Cloudy River battlefield, there was no limit to one's cultivation speed. If one was really capable, one could break through the Cloudy River battlefield in 1 or 2 years, and even reach the true lake stage. Chapter 444. Things like spirit sticks could be transferred, and this gave rise to a special transaction: spirit stick auction. Some cultivators who managed to snatch a spirit stick would choose to sell the spirit stick because they were embarrassed. Every once in a while, the Tianji Business Alliance would hold a spirit stick auction. Moreover, this kind of auction only used merit points as a bargaining chip, so even if one's luck was bad and he couldn't find a spirit land or get a spirit stick, as long as he had enough merit points, he could still cultivate very quickly. This was in line with some of the information Lu Yi had heard before. He had heard that merit points were very useful in the Cloud River battlefield, and now it seemed that this was indeed the case. In fact, merit points were very useful not only in the Cloud River battlefield, but anywhere and anytime. This was Lu Ye's first time in the Cloud River battlefield, so he didn't have to worry about the Spirit Land for now. Right now, the Spirit Land was basically owned by someone, unless he had the ability to snatch it from someone else. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, he was invincible, but in the Cloud River battlefield, that was not the case. After all, he had just advanced to the Cloud River tier, and even if his foundation was solid, the strength he could display was limited, and he couldn't be a match for those veteran Cloud River tier cultivators. He wanted to find some spirit sticks to take a look. Although he could take alchemical pills to cultivate even if there was no spirit chi of heaven and earth, if there was enough spirit chi of heaven and earth, the efficiency of his cultivation would be higher. He still had more than 70,000 merit points, so no matter what, he could buy some spirit stick. He casually found a manager of the Business Alliance to ask about the auction, and learned that only 2 days had passed since the last auction, and he would have to wait close to a month for the next one. He immediately extinguished the thought in his heart. He had all the information he needed to organize, and Lu Yi walked out of the Tianji Business Alliance. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the figures of cultivators were constantly leaping about in the sky. The Cloud River battlefield. It was much livelier than the Spirit Stream battlefield. Of course, this was because the Tianji Business Alliance was here. In fact, because the Cloud River battlefield was too vast, the chances of encountering cultivators in the wilderness were lower than in the Spirit Stream battlefield. After all, overall, there were much fewer Cloud River tier cultivators than Spirit Stream tier cultivators. Standing outside the Tianji Business Alliance, Lu Yi transmitted a message to Giant Armor. Comparing the 10 totems. He told Giant Armor his current location. Giant Armor replied, "Ong." Lu Yi guessed that Giant Armor probably knew where he was, but Giant Armor didn't have the 10 totems, so he didn't know his location. Lu Yi also didn't know where to go. Since he had come, I'll just take things as they come. It's my first time here, so I should familiarize myself with the environment first. With this thought, Lu Yi soared into the sky. He randomly picked a direction and flew in the air. The 10 points on the map were shown. 300 miles away from here, there was a third-grade spiritual land. Lu Yi wanted to go there and see what level of heaven and earth spiritual chi there was. They were only here to observe. If you don't ask for shelter, others probably wouldn't refuse. As for which camp occupied the spiritual lands. Actually, many of the spiritual lands were occupied by Grand Heaven Alliance and myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. Neither of them would easily reveal which faction they belonged to, nor would they know each other's origins. You wouldn't see such a thing on the Spirit Stream battlefield, because the Spirit Stream battlefield was occupied by the sects as a whole. However, such a phenomenon was common in the Cloudy River battlefield, because in the Cloud River battlefield, most of the cultivators acted alone. Even if they were in a group, they would also form small teams of 3 to 5 people. There would never be too many people gathered together to work. As such, if a new spirit land was discovered, the first cultivators to gather at the spirit land would sign the Heavenly Fate contract. Have some brief cooperation. The special environment created this kind of special way of doing things. That was why second senior sister Shui Yuan had told Lu Yi before that in the Cloudy River battlefield, the cultivators of the 2 camps weren't completely opposed to each other. They still needed some cooperation. With the Heavenly Fate contract, both sides could be at ease. There wouldn't be a situation where some people were playing tricks behind their back. After flying for a short time, Lu Yi summoned his spirit boat. If he traveled a long distance, he would be able to use it. If they traveled long distances, it would consume less energy to fly. Now, his spirit boat was a middle-grade spirit tool. Its speed was faster than before, and it was stronger. Moreover, it was even sturdier because there were even more defensive restrictions within it, so it wouldn't be easily damaged like in the past. There was no one around. Yi quietly appeared and sat in front of Lu Yi. She looked around. She said with some curiosity, "This is the Cloud River battlefield. It doesn't seem to be any different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. People are different. In the future, we'll meet cultivators of the Cloud River tier. It's okay. If you want to fight, Hupo and I will help you." Yi waved her small fist. Hupo also let out a whimper, indicating that he was very good at fighting now. "Where are we going now?" Yi asked. "We're going to a third-grade spirit land to scout the situation." Yi didn't ask any more questions. She sat up straight and looked around. Suddenly, she raised her hand and pointed in a direction. She exclaimed, Lu Yi, that cloud is so beautiful. It has 4 colors." Lu Yi looked in the direction she was pointing. Sure enough, he saw a 4-colored cloud in the horizon. Moreover, that 4-colored cloud was moving quickly. Looking at its direction, it was actually floating towards him. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He hadn't thought that he would encounter such a good thing right after entering the Cloudy River battlefield. According to the information he'd bought from the Heavenly Fate Commerce Alliance, before the spirit lots descended from the sky, there would be colorful clouds. The spirit lots that could allow cultivators to cultivate were precisely those colorful clouds that would fly down. A 4-colored cloud could give birth to 4 kinds of spirit lots: white, green, blue, and purple. If it was a 5-colored cloud, it could give birth to the highest grade golden spirit lots. Correspondingly, if there were only 3 colors, then the spirit lots that would be born would only be white, green, and blue. If there were 2 colors, then it would be white and green. This kind of colorful cloud that appeared before the spirit lots descended from the sky was at least a 2-colored cloud, and the best was a 5-colored cloud. Now that there was a 4-colored cloud in front of him, this meant that it could give birth to a purple spirit lot at the highest. Lu Yi immediately stopped. After looking for a moment, he confirmed that the colorful cloud was floating towards him. He was instantly delighted. His luck was really not bad. However, a moment later, Lu Yi's expression became serious. This was because below the colorful cloud, streaks of light were shuttling back and forth. Everyone knew that when the colorful cloud appeared, there would be spirit lots descending from the sky. The cultivators in the vicinity naturally followed closely. Looking at those nimble and strong figures, there were clearly a considerable number of elites among them. When cultivators were in the spirit stream tier, because the level of their cultivation level was directly related to the number of small circulations in their body, they could deduce the cultivation level of others by looking at the spirit light on the surface of their bodies. But it was different when they reached the Cloud River tier. Cloud River tier cultivators only had 1 large circulations in their body, and it was difficult to deduce their true strength from the intensity of their spirit light. Moreover, the Cloud River tier was the realm where the difference in strength between cultivators was the greatest. Some people broke through to the Cloud River tier with 240 apertures, while others broke through to the Cloud River tier with 360 apertures. Because of the number of apertures opened during the breakthrough, the strength that could be displayed would naturally be different. Therefore, in the Cloud River tier, it was very unwise to judge one's strength based on the level of their cultivation. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were often situations where cultivators with lower cultivation levels killed cultivators with higher cultivation levels. Here, there were only 2 kinds of cultivators: those who could be defeated and those who could not. As for whether one could defeat them or not, one would only know after a real fight. This was also the reason why Lu Yi dared to act alone when he had just arrived. He was indeed famous on the Spirit Stream battlefield, causing the various 10,000 Demon Ridge sects to want to kill him as soon as possible. However, that was only on the Spirit Stream battlefield. In the Cloud River battlefield, who would know who he was? Many cultivators who arrived at the Cloud River battlefield did not return to their sects for several years. For example, Lu Ye's third senior brother, Xiao Xinghe, had stayed in the Cloud River battlefield until he broke through to the True Lake realm. This was a good thing for Lu Yi. Within the Spirit Stream battlefield, he was infamous for his infamy. He was known as the Sect Exterminating Leaf, one of the 3 disasters of the Spirit Stream battlefield, and all sorts of other things. Before Tianjiu had arrived, he had caused the entire myriad Devil Ridge to curse him. Now that he had arrived at the Cloud River battlefield, he felt that he needed to keep a low profile. At the very least, he could not be like in the Spirit Stream battlefield, where people wanted to kill him wherever he went. In the entire Spirit Stream realm, he had spent almost all of his time being hunted down. It was really too miserable. Lu Yi did not become arrogant because of his achievements on the Spirit Stream battlefield. He was still very self-aware. With his current strength, there were many people on the Cloud River battlefield who were stronger than him. Therefore, when he saw a large group of flowing lights flying towards him, he hurriedly lowered his body and landed on a small hill below. There were at least a few hundred cultivators flying towards him, and as time passed, more and more cultivators continued to join them. After all, such a large cloud was floating in the sky. Within a radius of a few hundred miles, as long as one was not blind, they could see it clearly. They had not broken out into battle yet, because it was not time yet. Moreover, no one would casually reveal their faction. In the upcoming battle, unless there were people who were familiar with each other, everyone else would be opponents, regardless of whether they were from the opposing faction or their own faction. The cloud floated directly above Lu Ye's head, and then suddenly stopped. Lu Yi looked up, thinking that this was too much of a coincidence. Why did it stop above his head? The cloud was not too high from the ground, only about 3,000 feet. At this height, Cloud River tier cultivators could completely fly up, because according to common sense, the closer one was to the cloud, the more advantage they would have. However, in reality, no cultivator dared to get too close to the cloud. There had been people who had done so before, and now the grass on the grave was already more than 100 feet high. This was because when the spirit lot flew down from the cloud, its speed was extremely fast, and its destructive power was extremely great. If one was too close, no Cloud River tier cultivator would be able to withstand it. For things like spirit lots, the further they flew, the slower they would be, and the easier it would be to obtain them. Therefore, not only did the cultivators who had followed the cloud not approach the cloud, but they were also scattered in various locations. Obtaining spirit lots was a matter of luck, because no one knew where the spirit lot would land. Chapter 445. In the wilderness, the four-colored cloud was 3,000 feet above the ground. Lu Yi was directly below the cloud, looking up. With Lu Yi as the center, hundreds of cultivators stood scattered in a radius of 10 miles, all of them rubbing their palms in anticipation. Some of the cultivators' attention was only on the cloud, and there were also cultivators silently observing the surroundings, as if to see if there were any strong competitors. There were also cultivators gathered together in twos and threes, whispering to each other. From the looks of it, they were probably thinking of forming a temporary alliance. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, several streaks of light suddenly shot out from the cloud above. There seemed to be something hidden in the streaks of light. Lu Yi immediately activated his eyesight, but even when he looked at the streaks of light at the first moment, he couldn't see clearly what the thing in the streaks of light looked like. The streaks of light that shot out from the cloud almost instantly reached a height of 300 meters above the ground. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. The intelligence was right. If he was too close to the cloud at this time, it would really be very dangerous. This kind of speed was not something that a Cloud River tier cultivator could avoid. Once the streaks of light hit him, it was very likely that he would be pierced through. When they reached a height of 300 meters above the ground, the streaks of light that shot out suddenly slowed down greatly. At the same time, The thing in the streaks of light revealed its true appearance. Each streak of light was wrapped in a spirit stick that was as long as a finger, 1 inch wide, and thick at the top and narrow at the bottom. Looking at its texture, it seemed to be carved from a piece of jade. Among them, 4 of the spirit sticks were white and 1 was green. Immediately, there were cultivators that were closer to these spirit sticks, and flew out to meet those spirit sticks. There were only 5 spirit sticks in the first batch, but there were more than a dozen cultivators that flew out. Those who were lucky directly obtained a spirit stick, and no one fought over it. Those who were unlucky couldn't do it. Several people fought over a spirit stick, and there was a fight on the spot. Especially that green spirit stick, 5 or 6 pairs of eyes were staring at it, and the fight was the most intense. Lu Yi didn't move, mainly because the spirit sticks were a little far from his position. Even if he flew over, there wouldn't be enough time. However, looking at the fighting posture of those people, it was obvious that they were holding back. Now, none of the cultivators gathered here revealed their camp, so once a fight broke out, the opponents could be from the enemy camp, and could also be from the same camp. This was unavoidable. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi felt for the first time that his faction wasn't so obvious. This was different from the spirit stream battlefield, where cultivators from the same camp had almost never had any conflicts. Before the cultivators fighting for the spirit lots could be decided, more than a dozen streams of light flew out from the colorful clouds. This time, the number of green spirit lots floating down was obviously a few more. More and more cultivators rushed out and joined the fight. As time went by, batches of spirit lots fell from the clouds one after another. The area within a radius of 10 miles was bustling with noise and excitement as if salt had been sprinkled on hot oil. The cultivators kept a close eye on their target. Whenever a spirit lot fell close to them, they would fly out to snatch it, causing chaos everywhere. Lu Yi innocently stood motionless on the small hill. It wasn't that he didn't want to snatch the spirit lots, but his luck didn't seem to be good. None of the spirit lots that fell from the clouds were close to him. The closest one was 3 miles away. Gradually, Lu Yi began to understand something. The position directly below the clouds didn't seem to have any spirit lots falling. It was like holding an umbrella on a rainy day. There were no raindrops under the umbrella, and the raindrops would fall from the edge of the umbrella. Just as Lu Yi was considering whether or not to change his position, another batch of spirit lots fell. This time, there were a lot of spirit lots, over 100 of them. One of them was heading straight for him. Lu Yi was moved. After waiting for so long, he could finally take action. The stream of light was only 300 meters away from him in an instant. At this moment, the color of the spirit stick in the stream of light was revealed. It was a blue spirit stick. There had been blue spirit lots before, but there weren't many of them. The better the spirit lot, the fewer the number. So far, he hadn't seen a purple spirit lot. Lu Yi rushed into the sky, crossing the distance of 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye, and grabbed the spirit lot in his hand. At the same time, a strong wind came from the side. Lu Yi caught a glimpse of a long spear stabbing straight at him from the corner of his eye. The mountain coiling saber was unsheathed, and a fiery red saber light flashed. With a clang, Lu Yi was forced back, his hand numb. Lu Yi hadn't had much contact with Cloud River Realm cultivators, so it was difficult for him to estimate the other party's cultivation, but from the situation of this exchange, the other party was obviously stronger than him. A conservative estimate was that the other party was a 4th or 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Difficult to deal with. What made Lu Yi even more uncomfortable was that just as he came to a stop, he saw several figures pouncing at him from all directions. A blue spirit lot was already very valuable. Naturally, it was worth these people fighting over it. Lu Yi weighed the pros and cons of using the spirit lot to escape and didn't wait for the others to come close. He directly threw the spirit lot in his hand at the spear-wielding cultivator who had attacked him just now. That person reacted quickly and caught the spirit lot in his hand, But before he could rejoice, the cultivators who had been rushing at Lu Yi attacked him. That person's expression changed drastically. He immediately shook his spear and fought with the attackers. A moment later, this person's face was bruised and his nose was swollen. He fell from the sky in a sorry state, screaming miserably. He had already thrown away the blue spirit lot that Lu Yi had thrown to him. He had no choice but to throw it away. If he continued to hold it in his hand, he would really die. When fighting for a spirit lot, unless there was a real grudge, most people wouldn't kill. After all, no one knew which camp the person fighting for the spirit lot belonged to. Of course, people could die. Cloud River Realm cultivators weren't very old, and their vitality was vigorous, so it was easy for them to lose control when fighting. Seeing this person's fate, Lu Yi secretly rejoiced that he had acted fast enough. If he had tried to escape with the spirit lot, he would have most likely ended up like that person. Unfortunately, giant armor wasn't here. If giant armor was here, it would be perfect. This large piece of skin was thick and tough, and was extremely resistant to beatings. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to do anything to him, and he could have given the spirit lot to giant armor just now. The fight for the spirit lot was still going on, and the four-colored cloud in the sky had shrunk by more than half. Lu Yi made a few more moves, but found that with his current strength, it was very difficult to fight for the spirit lot. Many people were eyeing the green and blue spirit lot. Even if he got them, he couldn't keep them. He could only settle for the next best thing, and fight for the white ones. But there were many people who had the same idea as him. Every time the spirit lot was bestowed, though the white spirit lots were the most in number, there were also many people fighting for them. Unless one was lucky enough, they could get it at the first moment. Returning without success again, Lu Yi raised his head to look at the four-colored cloud in the sky, and saw that the cloud had shrunk to only 30% of its original size. Just as he was looking, the cloud trembled, and then collapsed, suddenly turning into hundreds of rays of light, scattering in all directions. This was the last batch of spirit lots, and in this batch of spirit lots, there were a few purple spirit lots. There were also close to 20 blue ones. The cultivators were in an uproar, and those who were confident in their strength and speed all stared at the purple and blue spirit lots. Although Lu Ye's heart was itching, he still suppressed the impulse in his heart. Moreover, his luck was better this time. A green and a white spirit lot fell near him. His figure rushed out, and Lu Yi pounced straight for the green spirit lot. When he was about 100 feet away, and just as he was about to succeed, a ribbon suddenly attacked from the side. Spiritual light lingered on the ribbon. It was a spirit tool. The ribbon directly rolled up, and the two spirit lots were sucked in. Lu Yi was furious. Up until now, he hadn't even gotten a hair. Such a good opportunity was hard to come by, and there were two spirit lots. No matter what, he had to snatch one. When the mountain pan saber chopped down, blood chi gathered on the right arm holding the saber, and his entire arm swelled up. In a flash, the fiery saber chopped down, and the ribbon was cut in half. The expected scene of the saber cutting the ribbon didn't happen. After all, it was a mid-grade spirit tool, and it couldn't be damaged so easily. Moreover, this spirit tool's characteristic was to use softness to overcome hardness. However, the huge force still chopped the two spirit lots out of the ribbon. Lu Ye's eyes were sharp, and he quickly grabbed the green spirit lot in his hand. Just as he was about to grab the other one, a lily-white hand reached out and gently shook the back of Lu Ye's hand. In that instant, Lu Yi felt as if he had been bitten by a snake. The back of his hand hurt, and it was incomparably red. A beautiful figure brushed past him, and an alluring fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. Lu Yi paused and looked up, only to see a woman with an enchanting figure standing not far from him. The woman's arms were wrapped with a ribbon. It was the spirit tool that had just rolled up the spirit lot. The ribbon was very long, and it casually wrapped around one arm twice, around her slender waist, and then around her other arm. The woman's two forearms were exposed, and they were dazzling white. At this moment, the woman was holding a white spirit lot, and eagerly looked at the green one in Lu Ye's hand. She coquettishly said, "Little brother, let's exchange?" Lu Ye hurriedly put the green spirit lot into his storage pouch. Stingy! The woman curled her lips, but her expression quickly changed. She hurriedly stood beside Lu Yi and assumed a fighting posture, as if she would beat up anyone who dared to come over. At the same time, she whispered to Lu Yi, "Cooperate." There were already a few people rushing towards them. Lu Yi nodded silently and stood side by side with the woman of unknown origin. The mountain pan saber in his hand ignited with flames. The cultivators rushing over couldn't help but frown when they saw this scene. If Lu Yi and the woman had gotten blue or purple spirit lots, they definitely wouldn't have let it go. Even if the two had assumed a cooperative posture, they might not have been able to keep the spirit lots in their hands. But if it was only green and white, it wasn't worth the effort. Chapter 446. The 4 colored clouds in the sky had already disappeared, and the competition for the spirit lot had also come to an end. The cultivators who had snatched the purple spirit lot had already fled. As for whether they could keep the spirit lot in their hands, it would depend on whether they were fast enough and whether they were strong enough. If they weren't fast enough or strong enough, even if they managed to snatch the purple spirit lots, they would still end up with nothing in the end. The competition for the purple spirit lots was already so fierce. If there was a golden spirit lot, the cultivators would probably fight until their brains turned to mush. The cultivators who had obtained something happily scattered, while those who didn't were somewhat dejected. "Little brother," the enchanting woman suddenly spoke up. Lu Yi ignored her and turned to leave. "Stingy." The female cultivator snorted with a depressed expression. However, compared to the cultivators who didn't obtain anything, her luck wasn't bad. At the very least, she had obtained a white spirit lot. In the vast wilderness, Lu Yi sped along. The Cloud River battlefield was really different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. Just from what had happened just now, it could be seen that under the premise of not exposing one's faction, hostile and cooperative relationships could change at any time. It was all about benefits. This situation was simply impossible on the Spirit Stream battlefield. On the Spirit Stream battlefield, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge and Grand Heaven Alliance would never have a chance to cooperate. Because the cultivators' cultivation was low, their range of movement was limited. As a result, it was clear at a glance whether the person they met was from their own faction or not. However, the Cloud River battlefield was different. Most cultivators were wandering around. If they met a stranger, as long as the conditions were right, they could cooperate to a certain extent. After flying for a few kilometers, a stream of light suddenly appeared in front of him, followed by a few figures. Looking at their posture, they seemed to be being chased. Lu Yi dodged and prepared to go around them. But as he got closer, he was shocked to find that the guy running away was actually the spear-wielding cultivator he had fought with during the battle for the spirit lots. This person had been beaten black and blue before, but he still looked the same at this moment. He was in a sorry state and looked very funny. The battle for the spirit lots had already ended, but he was still being chased at this time. Could it be, just as he was thinking about this, the spear-wielding cultivator flying towards him suddenly raised his hand, and a purple light shot towards Lu Yi. It was a purple spiritual stick. This guy's luck was really good. Just now, only a few purple-colored spirit lots appeared. Hundreds of cultivators were fighting over them, but he got one. However, he was obviously not strong enough to keep the purple spiritual lot. Seeing that the people behind him were about to catch up, he simply threw the purple spiritual lot to Lu Yi, who was passing by. As for whether he was thinking of diverting the disaster or something else, no one knew. In any case, that was how Lu Yi had dealt with him before. As the saying goes, an eye for an eye. As soon as the spirit lot was thrown out, the cultivators chasing this person quickly changed direction and chased after the spirit lot. Then, they saw Lu Yi catch the spirit lot in his hand. "Kid, throw the spirit lot over." one of them shouted. Someone else shouted, "This thing is extremely ominous. Brat, you won't be able to control it. Leave it to me. Let go if you don't want to die." Someone else shouted angrily. Just as these people were rapidly approaching, a pair of fiery red wings had already spread out behind Lu Yi. With a flap of his wings, his entire body turned into a fiery light and rushed in a direction. Previously, when he was fighting for the spirit lot, there were cultivators in all directions. It was not easy to activate the flying wing spirit pattern because even if he did, it would not be of much use. But the situation now was different. There were only these people. For a purple spiritual lot, it was worth it for him to take a risk. A purple spiritual lot was second only to a gold one. He had worked so hard for so long before, but he had only snatched a green one. With the flying wing spirit pattern, Lu Ye's speed was like lightning. The spear-wielding cultivator who threw the purple spiritual lot to Lu Yi was stunned. Obviously, he did not expect Lu Yi to have such an ability. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi had already disappeared. In midair, the wings on Lu Ye's back were constantly flapping. His spirit power was like a flood that was released from a dam, quickly disappearing. Now, he had 3 flying methods. One was flying on an artifact, one was flying in the air, and the other was using the flying wing spirit pattern. Each of these 3 methods consumed more spirit power than the other, especially the flying wing spirit pattern. The amount of spirit power required to maintain this spirit pattern was not comparable to the previous 2 methods. However, in terms of speed, the flying wing spirit pattern was the fastest and more flexible. Even so, there was no way to shake off the pursuers behind him. At a glance, he could tell that the pursuers were cultivators at the Cloud River realm. How could a fledgling like him, who had just broken through to the Cloud River realm, compare to them? The higher a cultivator's cultivation was, the stronger their foundation was, and the faster they could fly. Fortunately, he did not encounter any other cultivators along the way. Otherwise, the situation would not be optimistic. After fleeing for an incense stick's worth of time, the distance between them was only a few thousand feet. Such a distance was nothing to a Cloud River realm cultivator. Gritting his teeth, Lu Yi activated the wind travel spirit pattern again. He had never used the wind travel spirit pattern and the flying wing spirit pattern together. The consumption of the flying wing spirit pattern alone was terrifying enough. Coupled with the wind travel spirit pattern, even if he had broken through to the Cloud River realm and the amount of spirit energy in his body had greatly increased, he might not be able to maintain it for long. However, at this juncture, he could not care too much. If he could not shake off the pursuers, then the only option left for him was to give up on the purple spirit tag. No matter what, his life was the most important. Under the support of the wind travel spirit pattern, Lu Ye's speed increased again. The cultivators chasing him could not help but change their expressions when they saw this scene. They were also giving chase with all their strength, not daring to relax in the slightest. Moreover, from the fluctuations of Lu Ye's spirit energy, it was obvious that he had just broken through to the Cloud River realm. It was very likely that he was only a first or second order Cloud River realm cultivator. Each of them was 3 or 4 orders higher than Lu Yi. With such a huge gap in cultivation, no one would believe that they could not catch up to him. What was even more unacceptable was that Lu Ye's previous speed was not his limit. At this moment, with the support of the wind travel spirit pattern, the distance between them quickly increased. After another incense stick's worth of time, the pursuers could only see a small black dot on the horizon. After a while, they might not even be able to see this small black dot anymore. Even so, they did not give up. Although they did not know what method Lu Yi used to fly so fast, this method must consume a lot of spirit energy. The other party was only a first or second order Cloud River realm cultivator, so he would definitely not be able to last long. So, as long as they did not lose sight of Lu Yi and followed him from a distance, they would naturally succeed when his spirit energy was almost exhausted. Just as they were thinking this, Lu Ye's figure suddenly fell down and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When the pursuers arrived, they looked down and saw that there was only a jungle below them. There was no trace of Lu Yi at all. The pursuers stood mid-air and hesitated for a moment before scattering in all directions to search for Lu Ye's whereabouts. They were not in the same group. Somewhere in the jungle, Lu Yi had activated his concealment spirit tattoo and was quietly lying dormant. He had consumed a lot of spirit energy, and although he had not reached the point of being a lamp without oil, he would not be able to hold on for much longer. He could only hide in this jungle. With his concealment spirit tattoo, Lu Yi was not too worried about being found, unless his luck was particularly bad. From time to time, cultivators would pass by at a low altitude. Obviously, they had not given up and had been searching for him. Lu Yi hid in place, not moving. It was not until half a day later that there was no more movement in the surroundings that Lu Yi began to move. The concealment spirit tattoo was maintained to prevent anyone from hiding in the dark. After a while, Lu Yi found a dry cave and hid inside. Taking out some array flags, Lu Yi arranged a few simple arrays at the entrance of the cave before returning to the cave and sitting cross-legged. Lu Yi had consumed too much spirit energy, so he took out a spirit pill and swallowed it to restore his spirit energy. Activating his gluttonous meal, the medicinal efficacies of the source spirit pill, he swallowed quickly turned into his own spirit energy and filled his great cycle. He then took out 2 spirit sticks to examine them. One green, one purple. He had snatched the green one with his own ability, while the purple one was thrown to him by the spear-wielding cultivator. In the Cloud River battlefield, the spirit chi of heaven and earth in the wilderness was similar to the spirit stream battlefield's core region. It was not that it was impossible to cultivate in such an environment, but the efficiency was too low. Thus, if Cloud River tier cultivators wanted to increase their cultivation faster, they had to occupy spirit lands or fight for spirit stick. Especially the latter, it was the fastest way for Cloud River tier cultivators to increase their cultivation. Swallowing spirit pills was only a supplementary method for most cultivators. After all, no one was like Lu Yi, unaffected by the effects of pill toxins. Of course, one could also use spirit stones to cultivate. Using spirit stones to cultivate was much more efficient than simply swallowing spirit chi of heaven and earth, but it was worse than swallowing spirit pills. In addition, there were many mystic realms in the Cloud River battlefield. Some of these mystic realms would open at certain times, and cultivators could enter at certain times. Some mystic realms did not have any rules, and they could appear at any place in the Cloud River battlefield at any time. Most of the mystic realms had spirit sticks, and lucky cultivators could enter the mystic realms to explore. A small number of mystic realms had their own unique products, and they were very valuable. This could also be considered a kind of opportunity. In comparison, the opportunities in the spirit stream battlefield were more about inheritance. For example, Hua Xiai had obtained the inheritance of a poison doctor. Everyone thought that Lu Yi had obtained the inheritance of a spirit tattooist. However, the opportunities in the Cloud River battlefield were not mainly about inheritance. Instead, they were mainly about increasing a cultivator's cultivation. This information was recorded in the jade slip that Lu Yi had bought from the Tianji Business Alliance. When Lu Yi had seen this information, he had had a strange feeling. It was as if someone had deliberately arranged this. Spirit stream tier cultivators were weak, and they had just come into contact with the cultivation world. Thus, they needed inheritances more. Moreover, the inheritances in the spirit stream battlefield were mostly concentrated in the outer region and inner region. There were very few inheritances in the core region. However, once a cultivator reached the Cloud River tier, they would have already walked their own path on the path of cultivation. Thus, they needed to increase their strength as quickly as possible. The various treasures in the Cloud River battlefield, including spirit lands, spirit sticks, and the various mystic realms, could all help Cloud River tier cultivators increase their strength. It was impossible to say that this was just a coincidence and not a deliberate arrangement. Chapter 447. As the effects of the spirit pill took effect, his consumed spirit chi was quickly restored. Lu Yi was not in a hurry to use the spirit stick. This was something that could increase his strength, so he naturally had to use it when his spirit chi was full. Swallowing one source spirit pill after another, Lu Yi constructed some small spirit-gathering funnels on his body to speed up his recovery. He was now a first-order Cloud River realm cultivator, so his 360 spirit apertures still existed. However, as his cultivation increased, the boundaries of his spirit apertures would gradually become blurred. Half a day later, his spirit chi was completely restored. Lu Yi was just about to test how much the green spirit stick could increase his strength when suddenly, a slight noise came from outside, followed by a loud explosion. The alarm array he had set up before had been activated, and the intruder had even activated the explosion array. Hurriedly putting away the 2 spirit sticks, he got up and rushed out. He did not rush out of the cave because there was a tall figure blocking his way. It was a black bear that stood upright like an iron tower. At this moment, the black bear was roaring, and its fur was a little burnt, with blood flowing out. It was obviously injured by the array just now. The pain caused its temper to explode. It slammed its 2 huge claws on the rock walls on both sides, making banging sounds. Rich demonic chi rolled around its body. Lu Yi could tell at a glance that this was a demonic general. Cultivators had different levels, and monster beasts naturally had them as well. For cultivators in the spirit stream realm, they were ordinary monster beasts. Even an overlord like Xiao Hui was only an ordinary monster beast, because it had only reached the limit of its current level and had not undergone any qualitative changes. For cultivators in the Cloud River realm, monster beasts were monster generals, just like the black bear in front of him. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were many ferocious and powerful monster generals. Every year, cultivators would die tragically under the claws of these monster beasts. For cultivators in the True Lake realm, they were monster commanders. For cultivators in the Spirit Sea realm, they were monster kings. This should be the black bear's cave, because Lu Yi had found some black fur at the bottom of the cave. However, he was in a hurry to recover, so he did not pay much attention to it. He did not expect that the owner of the cave would come back at this time and be injured by the array he set up. Facing a fiend general in such an environment was undoubtedly very disadvantageous for Lu Yi, because it was impossible to move his body. Therefore, the moment she saw the black bear, Lu Yi called out, He immediately flashed out of Hu Po's body and reached out to touch the storage bag around Hu Po's neck. She took out the 9 worlds diagram and activated it with her spirit energy. She shook the diagram open and covered the black bear demon general. The black bear disappeared without a trace. Yi held the 9 worlds diagram in her hand, maintaining the activation of her spiritual power. She nodded at Lu Yi. The next moment, Lu Yi rushed into the 9 realms diagram with Hu Po in tow. As soon as Lu Yi and Hu Po appeared in the stone forest, an angry roar rang out. The black bear's sturdy body was like a huge mountain as it charged towards them. Hu Po roared and landed on the ground. His body expanded rapidly, revealing his true form as he charged towards the black bear. In terms of strength and realm, the black bear demon general was stronger than Hu Po because Hu Po had not yet reached the level of a fiend general. The reason he could enter the Cloud River battlefield was mainly because he had a pet contract with Lu Yi. Wherever Lu Yi, his master, could enter, he could enter. In terms of body size, even though Hu Po had become awe-inspiring, he was still much weaker than the black bear demon general. However, he was nimble enough. Just as the 2 figures were about to collide, Hu Po leapt high into the air. His vigorous body swept past the black bear's back, and his sharp tiger claws viciously slashed at the black bear's back. If it were any other fiend beast, this attack would have been enough to split open their back. However, the black bear was indeed a fiend general. Under the surging fiend essence, it covered the surface of its body, causing Hoopo's attack to not have much effect. Not only that, the black bear stood upright, quickly turned around, and slapped Hoopo with its paw. If this attack landed, no matter how thick Hoopo's skin was, he would not have a good ending. At that moment, the black bear's movements suddenly slowed, as if some invisible force was restraining it. Although it was only for a short moment, it allowed Hoopo to avoid danger. It was Yi's doing. Although Yi could not completely control the Nine Worlds diagram, she could still activate a bit of the diagram's power. Since she was in charge of the Nine Worlds diagram, she could slightly interfere with everything that happened within the diagram. Therefore, no matter who the enemy was, if they fell into the diagram and fought against Lu Yi, they would be at a great disadvantage unless they had the ability to break free of the diagram's restraints and escape. Lu Yi had already unsheathed his saber. The coiling mountain saber, which was covered in a fiery red glow and enhanced by the dual sharpness spirit inscriptions, ruthlessly slashed at the black bear's waist. The thick fiend essence was split open, leaving behind a bloody wound on the black bear's body. Feeling the pain, the black bear roared angrily again. It turned around and swiped at Lu Yi with its claws. However, Lu Yi had already retreated, blocking with the coiling mountain saber in front of him. Under that claw, Lu Yi slid a few dozen feet on the ground. Looking at the seemingly miserable wound, Lu Yi was secretly surprised. As expected of a fiend general, his saber had actually only caused a superficial wound. He had originally thought that his saber would at least be able to severely injure it. Taking advantage of the black bear's attention being distracted by Lu Yi, Hoopa rushed forward again. This time, he was smarter. His snow-white body was like an arrow leaving a bow as he slammed into the black bear, causing it to stagger. At the same time, he bit down and viciously tore off a piece of flesh from the black bear's body. Without waiting for the black bear to counterattack, Hoopa hurriedly jumped away. The black bear's strength was not bad, but after being absorbed into the Nine Worlds diagram, Lu Yi and Hoopa teamed up to attack it. Coupled with Yi's secret tricks, it naturally did not have a good ending. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, Lu Yi's saber slashed down and the black bear's huge body crashed to the ground. Its body was covered in cuts and bruises, looking very miserable. Looking at the black bear's corpse, Lu Yi gently exhaled. In terms of cultivation, the black bear's strength was almost equivalent to a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. But even if Lu Yi, Hoopa, and Yi could kill such a monster general, it did not mean that they could kill a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. First of all, cultivators might not be so easily absorbed into the Nine Worlds diagram. Moreover, cultivators had more means. Even if they were absorbed into the Nine Worlds diagram, they would still have the strength to resist. This black bear was strong, but its intelligence was not high, so it was played around by Lu Yi and Hoopa. The flesh and blood of such a monster general was undoubtedly very attractive to Hoopa. Lu Yi also liked to eat the flesh and blood of monster beasts. Compared to ordinary monster beast meat was more nutritious and could strengthen one's body over a long period of time. After a great battle, Hoopa had already pounced on the black bear and bit into its flesh. Lu Yi stepped forward and pressed his hand on the black bear's abdomen, circulating his spirit energy to investigate. Soon, he sensed something and stabbed the mountain coiling saber into the black bear's abdomen. With a twist and a pull, a dragon eye-sized bead stained with blood was extracted. Lu Yi took out some water and washed the blood off the bead. Looking at it, the bead had a scarlet luster like a meat core. A monster core. Ordinary monster beasts did not have a monster core in their bodies. Only after advancing to the monster general level would a monster core condense within their bodies. This was the crystallization and source of a monster general's power. With the monster core in hand, Lu Yi carefully sensed it and could indeed detect abundant monster essence within. Hupo, whose mouth was covered in blood from eating, walked over and rubbed his face against Lu Ye's hand, unable to conceal the longing in his eyes. Lu Ye casually tossed the monster core to Hupo, who swallowed it in one gulp, perfectly satisfied. Lu Ye called out softly. His vision changed, and Lu Ye and Hupo, together with the black bear monster general's corpse, appeared in the open space outside the cave. After storing the black bear monster general's corpse as food reserves, Lu Ye collected the scattered array flags at the entrance of the cave. Only then did he leave with Hupo and Yi. Originally, he wanted to try using spirit sticks, but now that he couldn't, he could only find another place. Half an hour later, Lu Ye landed on a small mountain peak. He found a suitable place and sat down cross-legged. Yi knelt at the side, staring at him eagerly, her amber eyes filled with curiosity. It was their first time coming into contact with spirit sticks, so they wanted to know what kind of effects it would have. Lu Ye first took out the green spirit stick. Previously, when he was in the cave, he had examined it. The spirit stick looked like it was made of jade, and its entire body was warm and moist. Whether it was green or purple, its size and shape were all exactly the same. The only difference was its color. Lu Ye didn't know what kind of mystery was hidden in this spirit stick that could actually allow cultivators to cultivate. He would know after trying it out. Lu Ye squeezed hard, and the green spirit stick in his hand immediately turned into fine powder. The green powder didn't scatter with the wind, but instead gently swirled and surged in front of him, quickly forming a green circle. The circle wasn't big, only about the size of a fist. At the same time this green circle formed, a pure mist visible to the naked eye appeared out of thin air. An unending stream of mist surged out from the green circle, and in the blink of an eye, the place where Lu Ye was standing became misty. After a brief examination, he discovered that this mist was actually spirit mist. Lu Ye was shocked. If the spiritual chi of heaven and earth wanted to turn into mist, it would have to be extremely dense. Moreover, this spirit mist that appeared out of thin air gave off an extremely pure and flawless feeling. Lu Ye didn't breathe it in and out, only breathing naturally. The spirit mist entered his body along with his breathing, and was quickly swallowed and transformed into his own spirit power. On the small mountain peak, the wind whistled, but it had no effect on the spirit mist. This spirit mist that appeared out of thin air lingered around Lu Ye, unable to be dispersed by the wind. Yi saw this and hurriedly entered a state of cultivation. Hupa also opened his mouth wide, continuously swallowing the spirit mist to strengthen himself. There was no need to mention Lu Ye, who had already begun to construct a small spirit-gathering funnel. In only an hour, the spirit mist that shrouded the surroundings disappeared. Lu Ye examined the river of spirit power in his body, and found that there wasn't much change. The cultivation of the spirit stream tier was to open the apertures, and then let the spiritual apertures form a small cycle. With every cycle, the cultivation level would increase by one layer. At the Cloud River tier, one needed to absorb spirit power to strengthen the river of spirit power in their body. With every breakthrough, their cultivation level would increase by one layer. Chapter 448. The benefits brought by a green spirit stick were obviously not enough to cause any qualitative changes in Lu Ye's cultivation, but he could feel that his spirit power river had indeed grown a little stronger. He took out the purple spirit stick again and squeezed it hard. The same scene as before appeared. The purple spirit stick turned into fine powder and swirled in front of him, forming a purple circle. From that circle, a large amount of pure spirit fog gushed out. In comparison, the density of this spirit fog was the same as before, and there was no change. From this, it seemed that there was a change in the quantity. The spirit fog produced by crushing the purple spirit stick should be more than the green one. As for whether this was the case, he would know after trying. Previously, the spirit fog produced by the green spirit stick was enough for him and Yi Hu to cultivate for an hour, and he didn't know how long the purple one would last. The spirit fog gushed out continuously, but after forming a certain scale, there was no more spirit fog gushing out, but the purple circle was still there. As Lu Yi and Yi who cultivated, the spirit fog was consumed, and new spirit fog gushed out from the purple circle. Lu Yi could vaguely make out something. Crushing the spirit stick wouldn't produce spirit fog out of thin air. In other words, the spirit stick itself didn't contain spirit fog. The spirit stick itself was just a medium. After this medium was crushed, it would turn into a circle that connected to an unknown place. The spirit fog would surge out from that unknown place. Moreover, in order to avoid some unnecessary wastage, before the spirit fog that came out was consumed, there wouldn't be any new spirit fog to replenish it. An hour passed, and the purple circle was still there, with spirit fog gushing out continuously. 2 hours passed, and it was still the same. 4 hours passed, and it was still the same. It wasn't until 4 to 5 hours later that the purple circle slowly dissipated, and no new spirit fog gushed out. This was in line with some of the information he had obtained. The information he had bought from the Tianji Business Alliance had some records about spirit stick. After all, for so many years, Cloud River tier cultivators had used different spirit sticks to make some comparisons and records, and the final conclusion was that the exchange ratio between different colors of spirit sticks was about 1 to 3. In other words, a golden spirit stick was equivalent to 3 purple spirit sticks, 9 blue spirit sticks, 27 green spirit sticks, and 81 white spirit stick. There was a blue spiritual stick in between the green and purple spiritual sticks, which could bring 9 times the benefits to the cultivator. It only took Lu Yi half an hour to completely consume the spirit mist brought by the green spirit lot. Now, this purple one took 8 to 10 hours. It was indeed a 9 times difference. He then checked his own spirit force river and found that the spirit force in the river was surging faster. The volume of the river had also increased, but it had not reached the point where it could change qualitatively and advance to the next level. Lu Yi faintly felt that if he could obtain 2 or 3 more purple spirit sticks, he should be able to break through to the second-order Cloud River realm. This kind of cultivation speed was indeed much faster than simply swallowing spirit pills. He had always taken spirit pills as the main means of cultivation. Previously, he had thought that the spirit lot was dispensable, but now it seemed that if he encountered a spirit lot bestowed by heaven in the future, he really couldn't miss it. To any cultivator, spirit sticks were extremely important. In the Yunhe battlefield, spirit sticks were even more important than merit points. If one had enough spirit sticks, it would be very convenient for them to do anything. Moreover, he and Hu Po could take spirit pills, but Yi couldn't. With spirit sticks, Yi could also rapidly increase her strength. Lu Yi was quite satisfied with such a harvest after just arriving at the Yunhe battlefield. Tossing a source spirit pill into his mouth, Lu Yi took out a 10-point map to check. Originally, he had planned to investigate the situation of the Grade C Spirit Land, but he had been chased all the way into this deep mountain forest. Looking at it now, the Grade C Spirit Land was already very far away from him. There was no other choice but to set off again. Summoning his spirit boat, he soared into the sky. 2 hours later, night fell. Lu Yi landed on a small mountain peak. It was already late, and it was not suitable to continue on his journey. The current him was no longer the invincible Lu Yi of the Spirit Stream battlefield. He was just a first-order Cloud River realm cultivator who had just arrived. So, Lu Yi decided to rest here for the night before setting off. The reason why he chose this place was because from a bird's-eye view, there were a few dilapidated buildings on the mountain peak. Obviously, people had once lived here, but now there was no one left. Lu Yi looked around and confirmed that there were no signs of living people. However, he inadvertently found a dried-up spring. He immediately understood that this place should have been a spirit land. This dried-up spring was the most obvious sign. Every spirit land had a spirit spring. The spirit spring gushed out, bringing with it pure and rich world energy, forming a spirit land. However, the world energy of some spirit lands could not be maintained forever. When the spirit spring dried up, there would no longer be any spirit chi, and the spirit land would no longer be a spirit land. From the number and scale of the remaining buildings, this should have been a small spirit land. Originally, there were only 3 to 5 people gathered here. As for what grade of spirit land it was unknown. The size of a spirit land did not necessarily depend on the size of the spirit spring. The larger the spirit spring, the larger the spirit land. Some large spirit lands were only D grade, but some small spirit lands were A grade. There was no direct correlation between the spirit land and its grade. Lu Yi randomly chose a room that looked relatively intact and walked in. Looking around, the furnishings were very simple. There was only a bed, a table, a chair, and a futon. It seemed that the cultivators who originally lived here were not very particular people. Most cultivators were like this. They did not have many pursuits in life, and were only obsessed with improving their own cultivation and strength. Lu Yi was the same, so he was quite satisfied with the current situation. After setting up a few simple formations outside the room, Lu Yi returned to the room and sat cross-legged. First, he took out a dragon's scale and absorbed the blood chi in it. Then, he swallowed a spirit pill and cultivated while reading. It had already become a habit for him to study all kinds of scrolls while cultivating. This time, he had brought out a lot of books from Madame Yun. Moreover, he had not completely comprehended the 20 sets of saber technique cultivation notes he had obtained from the wild saber sect. As for the 5 dragon scales, he had 4 with him and gave one to Hupa. Hupa liked it very much. As time passed, Lu Ye's expression suddenly changed as he vaguely heard something unusual. It was not a man-made movement, but rather the sound of flowing water. There were no springs or streams nearby, so where did the sound of flowing water come from? As if thinking of something, Lu Yi hurriedly got up and walked out of the room to investigate. Following the source of the sound, Lu Yi quickly came to the side of the originally dried-up spirit spring. At this moment, the spirit spring was actually gushing out clear spring water, and as the spring water gushed out, it was obvious that there was an extremely rich world energy gushing out. The world energy next to the spirit spring was a lot richer because of this. Lu Yi was very surprised. This was a once-in-a-century thing, and he actually encountered it? After the spirit spring dried up, there was a certain chance of it coming back to life, but this kind of thing was so small that it was basically impossible for cultivators to encounter it. This was originally an abandoned spirit land, but now that the originally dried-up spirit spring had come back to life, it meant that this spirit land would also come back to life. He originally planned to explore the situation in other people's 3rd-grade spirit lands and see how rich the world energy there was, but now it seemed that there was no need to go to other people's 3rd-grade spirit land. He had a spirit land on his side. As for what grade this spirit land would ultimately be, it was not clear for the time being. He could only wait until the spirit spring stabilized before making a judgment. Moreover, Lu Yi knew nothing about the standards of each spirit land, so he really couldn't make a judgment. Lu Yi, is there some kind of treasure down there? Yi looked at the gushing spirit spring with great interest and asked. Hearing her say this, Lu Ye's heart also moved. Go down and take a look? Yi said so and directly dove into the ground to investigate. The spirit spring was still gushing out, and after about 10 breaths, Yi's head popped out, looking a little unhappy. From her appearance, it was clear that she probably didn't find anything. She was also secretly muttering things like, "This doesn't make sense," and "impossible." In her opinion, this spirit spring gushing out a large amount of world energy clearly meant that there was some kind of miraculous treasure underground, but she couldn't find anything after investigating. The world energy that was gushing out of the spirit spring seemed to be born out of thin air. During the day, someone had inexplicably thrown a purple spirit lot at him, and at night, he had inexplicably obtained a spirit land. Lu Yi suddenly realized that his luck was really not bad. Although this spirit land was now his, whether or not he could defend it was still a problem. In the Cloudy River battlefield, cultivators would fight over the ownership of spirit lands, and it was not uncommon for people to fight over it. The higher the grade of a spirit land, the easier it was to attract the covetous eyes of others. If Lu Yi couldn't defend this spirit land, it would only benefit others. He definitely couldn't do it alone, even with Yi and Hu Po, so he still needed help. There was a ready-made helper, but he didn't know where he was now. Raising his hand and tapping on the battlefield imprint, Lu Yi transmitted a message to Giant Armor, informing him of his current location and asking him to hurry over and meet up with him. Giant Armor replied, "Ong." He then tried to transmit a message to 4th Senior Brother and Feng Yuechan, but the message still couldn't be transmitted. After doing all this, Lu Yi had Yi keep an eye on the spirit spring while he took out 16 array bases from his storage space. He had several sets of array bases on hand, all of which were dug out when he attacked and occupied other people's encampments on the spirit stream battlefield. Most of them were given to Shui Yuan to handle, so he didn't keep many for himself. He kept them just in case, but he didn't expect that they would be of use so soon. Chapter 449. Recalling the method of setting up a spirit array, Lu Yi placed the 16 array bases nearby, surrounding the buildings and the spirit spring before activating the spirit array. The defensive power of the newly formed spirit array was not very good. It needed to absorb enough spirit chi in order to strengthen its defensive power. The denser the world energy, the better the defensive power. Moreover, with the spirit array blocking it, the world energy in the spirit land would not leak out. The sky gradually brightened. After a night of accumulation, the world energy in the spirit land had become very dense, but it had not reached its limit yet. This kind of accumulation usually took a few days to stabilize. Only then could the grade of the spirit land be evaluated. Lu Yi began to set up various spirit arrays in the spirit land. In terms of cultivation, he should be at the bottom of the Cloud River battlefield, but this did not mean that his strength was at the bottom, especially since his attainments in the Tao of spirit arrays were not low. With the help of his spirit arrays, if he was prepared, even a 4th or 5th order Cloud River realm cultivator might not be able to do anything to him. If this was really a desolate land, it would not attract attention. But now that the spirit spring was recovering and the spirit land was coming back to life, it would definitely attract the attention of others. At that time, there would be some trouble. As he was busy, Lu Yi suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky. He saw an enchanting figure in the sky, looking down in surprise. Obviously, she had noticed the abnormality of the spirit land below. For eyes met and the person was surprised. "It's you." Lu Yi was also surprised. He did not expect to meet this female cultivator here. This woman was the one who had fought with him for the spirit lots and cooperated with him after a short fight. The Cloud River battlefield was so big, and they had met twice in just 2 days. It was really a small world. The female cultivator looked at Lu Yi and then at the 10 points map in her hand. After confirming that there was no indication of the spirit land on the map, she asked in surprise, "A newly born spirit land?" She had obviously misunderstood. Lu Yi did not intend to explain too much, and just looked at her quietly. The female cultivator gently landed outside the spirit array. She reached out and touched the light curtain of the spirit array. Her eyes lit up. "Little brother, are you an array cultivator?" In the entire Cloud River battlefield, if there was a sect of cultivators that was the most popular, it would undoubtedly be array cultivators. Formation cultivators could set up formations. For those cultivators who owned spiritual lands, if there was a formation cultivator overseeing it, the defensive strength of the spiritual lands would undoubtedly increase greatly. Therefore, on the Cloud River battlefield, almost every spiritual land had its own array formation cultivator. Without an array formation cultivator, A spiritual land would not be able to withstand the invasion of outsiders. This was a spiritual land, and Lu Yi looked like an array cultivator, so the woman's mind naturally became active. Even if Lu Yi just looked at her expressionlessly, it could not erase her enthusiasm. "Little brother, are you alone? Do you need a helper? Don't look at how delicate I am, I'm very good at fighting." The female cultivator tried her best to promote herself. As she spoke, she stuck out her chest, causing her breasts to rise. Lu Yi could clearly hear Yi's pouting voice coming from inside Hu Po's body. "Little brother, if you're really alone, even if you're a formation cultivator, you definitely won't be able to defend this spiritual land. How about I help you? I beg you to take me in, little brother." Towards the end of her sentence, she had already started to act like a spoiled child. This was the truth, but Lu Yi did not intend to monopolize this spiritual land. It was unrealistic. According to the rules of the Cloud River battlefield, the first few people to discover a small spiritual land like this could form a temporary alliance. They would occupy it together and take care of each other. Of course, the rules were dead and people were alive. If Lu Yi had enough people, he could reject them. But right now, he did not know where Zhu Jia was, and his fourth senior brother and Feng Yuechan could not be contacted. The biggest possibility for him to reject them was that they would spread the news of this spiritual land. At that time, there would be groups of people fighting for the ownership of this spiritual land. At that time, things would become very troublesome. Therefore, on the Cloud River battlefield, the first cultivators to discover an ownerless spiritual land would basically have a share of it. "Cultivation," Lu Yi said indifferently. The female cultivator stuck out her chest and said proudly, "Cloud River 5th Order. A Cloud River realm with 360 apertures. Back then, I was ranked 46th on the Spirit Stream list. With the heavens as my witness, I am not lying." Being able to enter the Spirit Stream list meant that she had a good foundation. However, in front of Lu Yi, who was the Spirit Stream first rank, she was still a little lacking. From this, it could be seen that the sect this female cultivator came from was not simple. It was at least a third-grade sect. As for which camp she belonged to, it was not important. "If little brother can take me in, I will work together with little brother to guard this spiritual land. Anyone who dares to invade will be killed without mercy. Come in." Lu Yi activated the jade slit ring of the protective array and opened a gap in it. The female cultivator immediately replied happily, "Okay." Walking in, she thought to herself that her luck was pretty good. She had randomly wandered around and actually found a new spiritual land that had not yet been stabilized. Furthermore, the other party did not have enough people. Only now did Lu Yi carefully look at the female cultivator. He could not deny that she was very beautiful and had a good figure. Her exposed forearms were so white that they looked like they could be broken by the wind. It was very eye-catching. The female cultivator looked around and suddenly realized something. "Little brother, isn't this a new spiritual land? Did the spirit spring awaken?" If it was a new spiritual land, there would not be so many dilapidated buildings. Since there were dilapidated buildings, it meant that there had been people living here before. If there were people living in the wilderness, it could only be a spiritual land. "Yes. Your luck is too good. You actually found a spiritual spring awakening. Of course, my luck is also pretty good. Hee, by the way, may I ask what little brother's name is?" The female cultivator had a carefree personality, but she did not lack the gentleness of a woman. Lu Yi opened his mouth and said, "Yi Lu." He had finally left the Spirit Stream battlefield. A new journey, a new beginning. Lu Yi did not want others to pay too much attention to him because of his name. The Jade Blood sect's Lu Ye had caused too many disturbances in the Spirit Stream battlefield. There were definitely people in the Cloud River battlefield who had heard of him. Therefore, Lu Yi had long since decided to change his name after entering the Cloud River battlefield. "Oh, so it's fellow Taoist Yi. My name is Shin Kitten. Their eyes met, and the atmosphere was a bit stiff. The name Yi Lu did not sound like her real name. As for Shen Kitten, there was no doubt that it was a different approach to achieve the same result. It was common for cultivators who were not familiar with each other to report their names to each other on the Cloud River battlefield. Please sign the Heavenly Secrets contract. Lu Yi broke the silence. He knew that for cultivators who were not familiar with each other to form an alliance and share a spiritual land, they needed to sign a Heavenly Secrets contract. Only a Heavenly Secrets contract could let each other feel at ease. Without a Heavenly Secrets contract as a guarantee, no one knew whether the other party would secretly do something bad. However, Lu Yi had never experienced this kind of thing before, so he did not know how to list out the terms of the Heavenly Secrets contract. He simply handed this matter over to Shen Kitten so that he could observe and learn. Okay. Shen Kitten readily agreed. She muttered to herself for a while. Suddenly, a golden light fell from the sky. She reached out and grabbed the golden light, taking out a Heavenly Secrets contract. Lu Yi had seen his fourth senior martial brother do this on the golden light, so he was not surprised. Fellow Yi, take a look and see if it's suitable. If it's suitable, we'll sign it. Shen Kitten handed the Heavenly Secrets contract to Lu Yi. Lu Yi carefully examined it and found that the terms on it were very detailed, including each other's obligations and responsibilities, and the need to help each other. They were not allowed to harm the alliance, and they were not allowed to privately disclose the existence of this spiritual land. This was mainly to prevent each other from summoning familiar cultivators, such as Lu Yi. If fourth senior martial brother and Feng Yuechan were summoned, it would undoubtedly be very disadvantageous for Shen Kitten. She would always have to worry whether Lu Yi and the others would have any ideas about her. It was precisely because of these concerns that on the Cloud River battlefield, there was a temporary cooperation between the cultivators of the two camps. Shen Kitten even considerately reserved 2 or 3 positions for people. Because in such a small spiritual land, there were usually 3 to 5 people gathered together. Lu Yi and Shen Kitten only had 2 people, so the defensive power was somewhat weak. If there were a few more people, it would be easier to defend this spiritual land. There's one thing I need to tell you in advance. Lu Yi looked up at Shen Kitten. And go ahead. Shen Kitten nodded. I have already revealed the news of this spiritual land to a fellow disciple, but I don't know when he will be able to come over. Just one. Only one. That doesn't matter, as long as you don't casually reveal it later. If there's no problem, sign the divine contract. Lu Yi raised her hand and bit the tip of her finger, branding her fingerprint on the divine contract. Shen Kitten did the same. In the dark, there was a divine contract. Lu Yi put away the divine contract. After signing the divine contract, Shen Kitten's expression was undoubtedly much more relaxed. She was still a little wary of Lu Yi before. She looked around and asked, "Where do you live?" Lu Yi pointed to the room where she stayed last night. Shen Kitten pointed to the other room. "Then I live here." As she said this, she held the edge of her skirt with both hands and happily ran into the room, busily tidying up. Lu Yi continued to set up the array. It wasn't until evening that Shen Kitten finished her work. When she ran out, she looked dusty. She said to Lu Yi, "I'm going to find a place to take a bath." When Lu Yi opened the protective array, she rushed into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. No one knew where she went. When Shen Kitten returned at night, Lu Yi had already entered the room to rest. After a day and night of accumulation, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the spiritual land had become very rich. When Lu Yi was in the spirit stream battlefield, she had also entered and exited many of the encampments of the core sects. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in each of the encampments of the core sects was extremely rich, suitable for cultivators to cultivate in. In comparison, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the spiritual land was 2 or 3 times richer than any of the encampments of the core sects in the spirit stream battlefield. In such an environment, cultivators of the Cloud River realm would naturally be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. Moreover, the situation of the spiritual land was not completely stable yet. After it stabilized, the concentration of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would still increase. Of course, the efficiency of this kind of cultivation was not as good as using the spirit lot, but it was better in a stable long term. There were too many uncertain factors in snatching the spirit lot. Chapter 450. In the spirit land, Lu Yi casually sat on a rock with the mountain coiling saber beside him. He held a book in his hand and read it with great interest, stuffing a spirit pill into his mouth from time to time. The world energy in the spirit land had completely stabilized. According to Shen Xiaomao's assessment, the grade of this spirit land was probably above C grade, not even close to B grade. Lu Yi was quite shocked because compared to the world energy of the sex in the spirit stream battlefield's core circle, the world energy in this spirit land was 3 to 4 times that of the sex in the core circle. If this was not B grade, then what kind of B grade was it? What about A grade spirit lands? It was no wonder that the cultivators of the Cloudy River battlefield were so desperate for spiritual lands. To most cultivators who relied on absorbing heaven and earth spiritual qi as their main method of cultivation, having a good cultivation environment was too important. It was related to the speed of cultivation. In terms of experience in the Cloud River battlefield, Shen Xiaomao was undoubtedly more experienced than Lu Yi, who was a newcomer. After spending 2 days together, Lu Yi learned a lot of common sense from her, including how to evaluate the grade of a spirit land. According to her, if the world energy of the sex in the spirit stream battlefield's core circle was used as a standard, then a D-grade spirit land was twice as rich as the sex in the spirit stream battlefield's core circle. 3 times was C-grade, 4 times was B-grade, and above 5 times was A-grade. Judging by this standard, this spirit land was indeed between C-grade and B-grade. The reason why he was not cultivating in his room at this moment was mainly to wait for 1 or 2 lucky cultivators to pass by. Lu Yi and Shen Xiaomao were the only 2 people in the spirit land. Lu Yi was a first-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, while Shen Xiaomao was a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Even if Lu Yi had arranged a large number of spirit arrays in the spirit land, the defensive power was relatively weak, so they needed more manpower. On this point, Lu Yi and Shen Xiaomao had reached an agreement. Generally speaking, such a small spirit land would gather 3 to 5 people. Lu Yi had already informed Giant Armor in advance, so they needed 1 or 2 more people to help. With the Heavenly Fate contract as a guarantee, the 2 of them could not privately gather cultivators they were familiar with. They could only wait here and see if they were lucky enough to meet 1 or 2 suitable candidates. According to Shen Xiaomao's explanation, such a spirit land was neither high nor low grade, so there was no need to worry about being targeted by Cloud River Realm Masters, because those masters were more than happy to occupy spirit lands of grade B or grade A. Such a spirit land between grade C and grade B was suitable for Cloud River Realm 4th or 5th order cultivators. Therefore, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that the grade of a spirit land wasn't high. If this spirit land reached the grade of A grade, it might attract a Cloud River Realm 8th or 9th order master, and if that happened, the spirit land would definitely be lost. Only then did Lu Yi know that it was just a spiritual land, but there were actually so many things to pay attention to. This place was considered a desolate wilderness, so there were few people around. Lu Yi waited outside for a day, but did not see a single person. The next day, it was Little Cat Shin's turn to be on duty outside. Having just entered the Cloud River battlefield, Lu Ye's main task was to improve his own cultivation. Only by improving his cultivation could he have enough power to protect himself. Therefore, he did not slack off in his cultivation these days. He swallowed a large number of source spirit pills, and with the rich world energy in the spirit land, the spirit energy river in his body grew stronger day by day. The cultivation of the Cloud River realm was to strengthen the spirit energy river. Every time one broke through a limit, their cultivation would increase by one level, until the spirit energy river filled the body and turned into a lake of spirit energy, a true lake. As he was cultivating, he suddenly heard Shen Xiao Mao's voice from outside, and at the same time, another person's voice sounded. Lu Yi put down the scroll in his hand and listened quietly. A moment later, he heard Shen Xiao Mao shout from outside, "Fellow Yi, come out and receive the guest." Lu Ye's face turned black when he heard this. He stood up and pushed the door open. He saw Shen Xiao Mao standing inside the array, and another figure standing outside the array's light curtain. It was also a woman with a weak expression and a tear mole under the corner of her eye. Shen Xiao Mao greeted warmly, "Fellow Yi, a homeless fellow Taoist has come. Her name is Ruan Qingzhu." The woman outside the array curtsied gracefully. Her voice was soft and weak. She was the complete opposite of the loud Shen kitten. "Yes, her name is Ruan Qingzhu." Shen Xiaomao nodded. "Fellow Yi, I've asked. Fellow Ruan is willing to stay. She's quite strong, a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. She meets our requirement." Ruan Qingzhu put her hands in front of her lower abdomen and bowed gracefully again. "Thank you for not abandoning me. If you can take me in, I'll definitely advance and retreat with you." Lu Yi looked at her for a while and nodded slightly. He took out the array jade to open the protective array and let Ruan Qingzhu in. He then took out the Heaven's Secret contract he signed with Shen Xiao Mao and handed it over. "Take a look. If there's no problem, sign it." Ruan Qingzhu took it and looked at it carefully for a while. She smiled slightly. "There's no problem." Saying so, she put a finger in her mouth and bit it, then pressed her fingerprint on the Heaven's Secret contract. Lu Yi put away the Heaven's Secret contract. Shen Xiao Mao clapped her hands and said, "In this way, we have 3 people. Including fellow Ye's fellow disciple who hasn't arrived yet, there are 4 people, so we can take in 1 more person at most. I think the last person should be left to fate. There's no need to force it. What do you 2 think?" "Okay." Lu Yi naturally had no opinion. Ruan Qingzhu had just arrived, so she had no opinion. She smiled and said, "I'll listen to sister." Shen Xiao Mao smiled, then it settled. "It's fate that we can gather together. In the future, I'll have to rely on you too." Ruan Qingzhu pursed her lips and smiled. "Sister, what are you saying? I'm the one who needs to rely on you." Lu Yi had already turned and entered the room to continue cultivating. Outside, Shen Xiao Mao said to Ruan Qingzhu, "This person's personality is a bit dull, but he's not a bad person. You'll know when you get to know him." And then, "Sister, you just arrived. I'll take you to clean up the place. Where do you want to live? There are a few empty rooms here. I'll live here. Then I'll be your neighbor." "Good." Inside the room, Lu Yi frowned. He felt that this woman was really strange. They had only known each other for a short time, but they were so familiar with each other. It was really strange. With Ruan Qingzhu in the Spirit Land, and her 4th-order Cloud River Realm cultivation, the defensive power was naturally increased. Coupled with the many spirit arrays arranged by Lu Yi, if anyone wanted to take down this Spirit Land, they would have to have an absolute advantage in numbers or strength. Otherwise, 3 to 5 people wouldn't be enough. Days passed, and Lu Yi was immersed in cultivation, unable to extricate himself. The source spirit pills he brought from the sect were rapidly consumed. Suddenly, he found that the number of spirit pills he brought out was a bit low. The main reason was that he didn't expect the Cloud River battlefield to be like this. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, he could seize cultivation materials by killing enemies, but in the Cloud River battlefield, he hadn't killed a single person so far. This caused the spirit pills he brought out to be somewhat insufficient. The main way he cultivated was by swallowing spirit pills. If he didn't have enough spirit pills, how could he cultivate? Taking out the 10-minute map to check, he found that there was a Heavenly Secret Commerce Union headquarters 800 kilometers away. For the current him, it wasn't too far. If he flew back and forth, it would only take half a day. The next day, he walked out of his room and went to Shen Xiao Mao's room not far away. He raised his hand and knocked on the door. When the door opened, Shen Xiao Mao looked at him with a puzzled face. Is something the matter, fellow Yi? I need to go out. Oh. Shen Xiao Mao nodded. Then go quickly and come back quickly. Lu Yi handed the jade slip that controlled the spirit array to her. When I'm not here, be careful. Don't worry, we will guard the home well. Shen Xiao Mao patted her chest, causing Lu Yi to inadvertently take a few more glances. Summoning the spirit boat, Lu Yi soared into the sky. The door next door opened, and Ruan Qingzhu poked her head out and asked curiously, Where did fellow Yi go? Shen Xiao Mao shook her head. I didn't ask. He just said that he needed to go out. Don't worry about him, he's already so old. Ruan Qingzhu smiled. Flying on his artifact, he rushed all the way in the direction of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. After cultivating these days, although Lu Ye's cultivation hadn't broken through, the accumulation of his spirit energy had reached a limit. Lu Yi felt that he should be about to break through, and he was only one step away. However, even if he broke through, he would only be a second-order Cloud River realm cultivator. Looking at the entire Cloud River battlefield, his cultivation would still be at the bottom. However, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and rice must be eaten one bite at a time. In front of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Lu Yi landed and walked in. He found a manager of the Commerce Alliance, and spent a lot of spirit stones to buy a batch of source spirit pills, leaving only a few for backup. He didn't bring too many spirit stones with him from the sect. This time, if he ran out of pills, he would have to find a way to find cultivation materials. How to find them was a problem. Just as he was about to leave, the manager of the Commerce Alliance said, Tonight, the Commerce Alliance will be holding a spirit lot auction, and there will be a purple spirit lot. If this guest is interested, he might as well stay and take a look. Lu Yi was naturally interested. Spirit lots were of great help to his cultivation. He had obtained a purple and a green spirit lot before, and after using them to cultivate, he couldn't forget the feeling of rapid improvement. Unfortunately, heavenly spirit lots were things that could only be encountered by chance, and he hadn't encountered them these days. Spirit lot auctions used merit points as chips, and he still had more than 70,000 merit points. Looking at the entire Cloud River battlefield, there were only a few people who had more merit points than him. With so many merit points in his hands, he wasn't afraid of any opponents in the auction. When Lu Yi first entered the Cloud River battlefield a few days ago, he wanted to experience the spirit lot auction, but unfortunately, only 2 days had passed since the auction, and he didn't get the chance. This time, he finally had the chance to experience it, so he immediately decided to stay. He sent a message to Shen Little Cat, telling her that he would return a little later. Shen Little Cat quickly replied, indicating that she understood. She also reminded him to pay attention to his safety and so on. This made Lu Yi feel a little warm in this unfamiliar battlefield of the Cloud River. Chapter 451. He had left his mark with Shin Kitten and Ruan Qingzhu. After all, they had signed the Heavenly Secret Contract and were trustworthy partners in attack and defense. After staying in the Merchant Union until night, the Spirit Lot auction began. It was different from the auction that Lu Yi had imagined. Every cultivator who participated in the auction received a small thing made of unknown material from the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union. This thing was about the length of a finger and looked like a jade finger. After being told how to use it by the manager of the Merchant Union, Lu Yi held the jade finger in his own compartment and immersed his mind in it. In an instant, the scene changed. It was somewhat similar to his experience every time he entered the Heavenly Secret Treasure House. His mind suddenly appeared in a small sealed room. There was nothing else in the small room. There were only spirit lots floating in the air. There were more than 100 white ones, followed by more than a dozen green ones, a few blue ones, and the one in the middle was purple. It was unique. He didn't know which lucky person had snatched this purple spirit lot and didn't use it himself but took it out to auction. It was understandable. After all, cultivators consumed too many resources to cultivate. Many cultivators were very poor. This wouldn't change because of the increase in cultivation. There was a number next to each spirit lot. When Lu Yi paid attention, these numbers were constantly changing and increasing. After looking at it for a moment, Lu Yi understood that the changing numbers next to the spirit lot represented the price of this spirit lot. At this moment, there must be many cultivators like him who were immersed in this small space to participate in the auction. This method was very novel because all the auctioneers would not meet each other face to face. In this way, no one knew who was bidding. Even if someone won the best purple spirit stick, they did not have to worry about being targeted by someone with ulterior motive. Lu Yi vaguely guessed that this auction method had something to do with the auction chips being merit points. For cultivators, the only place where merit points could be used was the Heavenly Secret Treasure House. This should be an auction that Heavenly Secret was participating in. Otherwise, it would be impossible to use merit points. The value of the spirit lot was a problem. After thinking about it, Lu Yi sent a message to Shin Kitten and asked, "You're in the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union?" Shin Kitten sensed something. If it's a spirit lot, the value of a white spirit lot is usually around 200 merit points. It's not worth it if it's more than 220 merit points. You can convert the other spirit lots according to the ratio. Lu Yi expressed his gratitude. The white spiritual sign was worth around 200 merit points. The green one was 600 points, and the blue one was 1,800 points. The purple one cost 5,400 merit points. As for the golden one, Lu Yi had never seen it before. Each of them was worth 16,200 points. According to Kitten Shin, if the price rises by more than 10%, it wasn't worth it. He had a standard of measurement in his heart. At this moment, Lu Yi looked at the spirit lots again and found that it was indeed as Little Cat Shin said. Every single white spiritual stick. Their prices fluctuated around 200 yuan, while the green ones were around 600 yuan. The blue one was around 1,800. As for the only purple one, at this moment, the price had already reached 5,500 points. Lu Yi naturally stared at the purple lot. He raised his hand and pointed at the purple lot. The spirit stick immediately emitted a light, and the price changed to 5,550 points. Seeing this scene, Lu Yan had a guess and headed towards another white spiritual marker. As the price changed, the white spirit stick also emitted a fine light. As expected, a spirit stick that was blooming with light. It represented that he had bid and was holding the bid. Those that did not bloom with light represented that he had lost the qualification to hold the bid or did not bid. After figuring this out, Lu Yi began to participate in the auction. In a short moment, a large number of spirit sticks emitted light. But very quickly, the spirit sticks that were emitting light dimmed one by one. This was undoubtedly because someone had bid higher than him. He had more than 70,000 merit points. How could Lu Yi be afraid of anyone? He continued to bid. Time passed, and from time to time, a spirit stick disappeared into thin air. That meant that it had been bought by someone. Lu Yi had more than a dozen white spirit sticks. The price was below 220, which was still acceptable. A moment later, he had a few more green and 2 more blue ones. The spirit sticks disappeared one after another. In the end, only the purple spirit stick was left in the field. At this moment, the price of the purple spirit stick had reached 5,900 points. According to the experience taught by Kitten Shin, if this purple spirit stick exceeded 6,000 points, it would not be worth it. However, Lu Yi only wanted to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Spending more merit points was actually acceptable. The purple spirit stick that was emitting a fine light suddenly dimmed, and the price became 5,950 points. This was undoubtedly because someone else had bid higher than Lu Yi. Lu Yi immediately increased the price again. After several rounds of exchanges with the unknown competitor, the price finally stabilized at 6,200 points. The other party did not bid anymore. It was unknown if it was beyond his ability or his expectations. After waiting for a moment, the purple spirit stick flashed 3 times and emitted a bright light. It was like this every time he bid for a spirit stick. Lu Yi immediately understood that this spirit stick was his. He reached out and took the purple spirit stick and put it into his storage space. After the auction ended, Lu Ye's mind left the small room. He checked his harvest. There were 15 white spirit sticks, 6 green spirit sticks, 2 blue spirit sticks, and 1 purple spirit stick. He had spent more than 16,800 merit points. Originally, he had more than 70,000 merit points, but now he only had a little more than 57,000 merit points left. Lu Yi was undoubtedly very satisfied with such a big harvest. With so many spirit sticks, he only needed to retreat for a few days when he returned to the spirit land. The second-order Cloud River realm was just around the corner. There was probably no hope for the third-order Cloud River realm, but it would save him a lot of time. Outside the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, the moon was bright and the stars were few. For a Cloud River realm cultivator like Lu Yi, the night was not suitable for traveling. Staying in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance for a night was the best choice. However, considering that he was not in the Spirit Land, the defensive power of the Spirit Land would be greatly reduced. Lu Yi could only set off overnight. The moonlight sprinkled down as the spirit boat flew. Hu Po, who was squatting on Lu Ye's shoulder, was in high spirits. Ever since he learned the cultivation method of swallowing and spitting moonlight from Giant Jia, Hu Po was the happiest in this kind of weather. Squatting on Lu Ye's shoulder, he breathed in moonlight at a speed visible to the naked eye. He sped all the way. While flying, Lu Yi suddenly saw a stream of light rushing towards him from the side. It was extremely fast. Looking at its posture, it was obviously coming towards him. Lu Ye's face darkened. He thought to himself that he was really unlucky. Although he did not know what the other party was planning, he could tell that the other party did not have good intentions just by looking at their posture. Judging from the other party's speed and faint spirit energy fluctuations, the other party was at least at the 7th or 8th order Cloud River realm. After coming into contact with a few Cloud River realm cultivators, Lu Yi had his own set of standards for judging the cultivation of others. He did not dare to say that he was completely correct, but at least the error was not big. "I'm not his opponent." Lu Yi immediately changed his direction and hurriedly fled with the support of wind travel. The person behind him chased after him. The difference in strength was too great. Even with the enhancement of the wind travel spirit rune, the distance between them was slowly closing. Just as Lu Yi was considering whether to activate the flying wings, Yi's voice suddenly rang out, "Lu Yi, something is wrong with that person. He seems to have fallen." Lu Yi looked back and found that the stream of light chasing him had become extremely dim. Within the stream of light, a figure was falling down. Although the figure was trying to stabilize himself, he was unable to do so. "This guide is injured." Lu Yi stopped and watched as the other party fell to the ground in a sorry state. If he had not forcefully stabilized himself when he was close to the ground, he would have fallen to his death. If the other party was in good condition, Lu Yi would naturally run as far away as possible, but if the other party was seriously injured, there was no need to be so afraid. Now that he thought about it, perhaps the other party did not come to him with any malice, but wanted him to save him? Standing in place and pondering for a moment, Lu Yi rushed in the direction that the person fell. A moment later, he saw a figure covered in blood leaning against a tree. The other party was indeed seriously injured. There was a fist-sized hole in his chest, and his squirming internal organs could be faintly seen. The other party's injuries were not limited to this. The other party was covered in wounds from head to toe. At a glance, it was obvious that he had experienced a fierce battle. With such injuries, he won't survive. Lu Yi was often injured himself, so the severity of his injuries could be seen at a glance. Leaning against the tree, the person breathed softly. Faintly sensing something, he opened his eyes and looked into Lu Ye's eyes. He clenched the blood-stained sword in his hand and smiled sadly at Lu Yi. In an extremely weak voice, he said, "Fellow Taoist, you run really fast. Why are you chasing me?" Lu Yi did not understand. This guy looked like he was about to die, so why was he still chasing him? It made him think that the other party did not come with good intentions, so he was worried for nothing. The other party said, "I won't survive. It wasn't easy to meet someone, so I want to entrust you with something." "What is it?" "Help me transfer this sword to the Shenxing sect." The person raised the blood-stained sword in his hand. "Shenxing sect, is that a sect from the Myriad Demon Ridge?" Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. If he remembered correctly, he had received safety money from this sect at the Spirit Stream battlefield. In other words, this sect was a third-rank sect and had its own station at the core of the Spirit Stream battlefield. "Fellow Taoist, are you from the Grand Heaven Alliance?" The person vaguely heard some information from Lu Ye's tone. Lu Yi was silent. "It doesn't matter. If you only want to transfer a sword, you can entrust it to the Tianji Business Alliance. There's no need for you to personally make a trip there. If you agree, all of my belongings, except for this sword, will be yours. To tell you the truth, I'm actually quite rich." "Sure." Lu Yi nodded. It was only a sword, and it was entrusted to the Tianji Business Alliance. It was not a difficult task. "That's good." The person relaxed and smiled bitterly. After cultivating for so long, it's all for naught. Lu Yi did not say anything. He had fallen to the other party's level, so he could not understand how the other party felt. However, the cultivation world had always been like this. Life and Death. Chapter 452. Draw your sword. Under the tree, the person leaning against the trunk looked at Lu Yi calmly. Lu Yi looked at him quietly. "I'm a 7th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Your cultivation shouldn't be too high. If you kill me, you can get at least a few hundred merit points. Consider it my final gift to fellow Taoists." In the Spirit Stream battlefield, killing enemies above one's realm would give a reward that increased exponentially. This rule was not only applicable in the Spirit Stream battlefield, but also in the Cloud River battlefield, and even in the entire cultivation world of the 9 states. Moreover, Cloud River Realm cultivators had a much higher number of merit points than Spirit Stream Realm cultivators. In the Spirit Stream Realm, the number of merit points a cultivator had was determined by their cultivation level. For example, a 5th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivator was worth 5 merit points. A 9th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivator was worth 9 merit points. A 7th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivator was worth 10 merit points, and a 9th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivator was worth 12 merit points. At the Cloud River Realm, the number of merit points increased greatly. A 1st Order Cloud River Realm cultivator was worth 20 merit points. Every time a cultivator reached a higher realm, the number of merit points would increase by 5. For example, the person in front of him who was about to die was a 7th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so the number of merit points he would get was 50. If Lu Yi killed him with his 1st Order Cloud River Realm cultivation, then he would be able to kill an enemy 6 minor realms above him. The number of merit points he would get would be 7 times the number of merit points, which was 350 merit points. It was undeniable that this was quite valuable to any cultivator. 350 merit points could buy 1.5 white spirit stick. Killing enemies above one's realm would give more rewards, but in the Cloud River battlefield, there would be no punishment if a cultivator with a higher cultivation killed a cultivator with a lower cultivation. This was different from the Spirit Stream battlefield. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, if the strong bullied the weak, Heaven's Secret would deduct merit points as punishment. This was a kind of protection Heaven's secret gave to cultivators with lower cultivation. Therefore, the spirit stream battlefield was divided into the outer ring, inner ring, and core ring. However, once a cultivator reached the Cloud River realm, they had already passed the initial stage of cultivation. It was always clear who they should provoke, and who they should not provoke. If they provoked someone they should not provoke and were killed, then they deserved it. Tianji would only protect cultivators who had not been in the cultivation world for long. As for cultivators of the Cloud River tier, so he just let it go. There's no need for that. Since I've taken your money, I'll help you. I'll ask the Tianji Business Alliance to deliver your sword to the Xinxing clan. Lu Yi had been cultivating since then. He had killed many people from the Myriad Demons Ridge. He naturally had no qualms about killing the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge. But if he really wanted to kill a person who was about to die without any chance of fighting back, he really couldn't bear to do it. The man forced a smile and said, "Fellow Taoist, please give me a quick death. Waiting for death like this is too torturous." Lu Yi was speechless. Only then did he slowly pull out the Pan Shan saber. The man let go of the sword in his hand. He closed his eyes. Lu Ye's spiritual power surged and he instantly broke through a distance of more than 100 feet. The Pan Mountain saber pierced straight into his chest. Perhaps it was because of the pain, the man's eyes suddenly widened. He instinctively raised his hand and grabbed Lu Ye's arm. He used a lot of force. Lu Yi felt the pain. But soon, that person's power dissipated. His raised hand fell down powerlessly, and the light in his eyes quickly dissipated. Lu Yi drew his knife. With a burst of hot blood, he saw that the man's eyes were still wide open. He raised his hand and closed his eyes. They were neither relatives nor friends, nor did they have any friendship. He killed the other party just like that. Lu Yi didn't have too many psychological fluctuations. It was just that he was also a cultivator, and the other party was already a 7th-order Cloud River realm cultivator. He still couldn't avoid the fate of death on this Cloud River battlefield. This made Lu Yi feel the cruelty of the cultivation world. It also made him secretly reflect on himself when he walked on the Cloud River battlefield in the future. He had to be more careful. This was not the Spirit Stream battlefield where he could dominate. There were too many people here who could easily kill him. Yi flashed out. Standing beside Lu Yi, she seemed to be in a low mood. Lu Yi stepped forward and took off the storage bag from the man's waist. Then, he picked up the blood-stained sword in his hand and took out a cloth from his storage bag to wipe the blood off the sword. He didn't know what this sword meant to that cultivator. Before he died, he still had to find someone to send the sword back to his sect. At this moment, looking at it carefully, 2 small words were engraved on the hilt of the sword. Qing Yun. It seemed to be the name of the sword, but it also seemed to be the name of a person. Who knew? It was most likely the latter. This might be a token of love between him and a woman. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to be so persistent in sending the sword back. Lu Yi, can I bury him? Yi suddenly asked. After killing so many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators with Lu Yi, this was the first person she wanted to bury properly. Of course. No matter what, he had taken the other party's money. Burying him and letting him rest in peace was a piece of cake. However, Lu Yi didn't dare to stay in the same place for too long because this person was seriously injured. He didn't know if there would be strong enemies chasing after him, so he took the man's body and flew far away, only stopping when he reached a place with beautiful mountains and clear water. Together with Yi, they found a place and dug out a large hole. They buried the body and carefully filled it up. Yi bowed a few more times to this person's grave before returning to Hu Po's body. Originally, he wanted to rush back to the spiritual land, but now he had to run back to the Tianji Business Alliance. Along the way, Lu Yi studied the sword engraved with the 2 words, Qing Yun. He didn't find anything special about it. It was just a mid-grade spiritual weapon with 18 restrictions and was worth a few hundred contribution points. Lu Yi took out the other party's storage bag and tried to open the restriction lock. Speaking of which, ever since he entered the Cloud River battlefield, he found that his luck was quite good. Not long after he entered, he encountered the heavenly secret blessing. Moreover, the four-colored cloud coincidentally stopped above his head. Although the process of fighting for it was not satisfactory and he only obtained a green spiritual stick, the final result was surprising. Someone delivered a purple spiritual stick to his door, benefiting him for free. After that, he went to a place to rest. He also encountered the rare spirit Spring Awakening. He had picked up a spiritual land for free. Tonight was the same. He could have chosen to rest in the Tianji Business Alliance for the night before returning, but because he was worried about the spiritual land, he decided to travel through the night. Just as he was worrying about his cultivation resources, a person who was about to die appeared in front of him. Now, even the storage bag was in his hand. If he had decided to rest in the Tianji Business Alliance for the night, he would have missed out on such a good thing. He didn't have such good luck in the Spirit Stream battlefield. If it happened once or twice, it would be fine. The key was that he had only been in the Cloud River battlefield for 10 days, and he had encountered such good things several times. This was no longer something that could be explained by good luck. Lu Yi faintly suspected that it had something to do with the Tianji blessing when he advanced to the Cloud River realm. The Tianji blessing was so grand, but the benefits it brought to him were unsatisfactory. Lu Yi always felt that the Tianji blessing was all bark and no bite. But what if there were benefits that couldn't be seen? For example, luck. Luck was a very strange thing. Those with good luck could rise to the top, and those with bad luck couldn't even drink cold water. Lu Yi had always felt that his luck was mediocre, and there was no reason for it to suddenly change after entering the Cloud River battlefield. If it was related to the blessing of heavens that he had experienced before, then it would make sense. Of course, this was only Lu Ye's guess. As for whether it was true or not, it had to be verified in the future. With Lu Ye's current attainments in the Tao of Spirit Patterns, it was really too easy to open the restriction lock on the storage bag. After a short while, the restriction lock was opened. Lu Yi searched through it. In the end, he found that the person was right. Compared to other Cloud River realm cultivators, this person was really quite rich. Lu Yi didn't know the name of some rare minerals and spirit flowers, but he didn't mention them for the time being. This person should have collected them during cultivation or obtained them from killing enemies. The reason for this deduction was because there were more than 10 mid-grade spirit tools in this person's storage bag. There were also quite a few flying spirit tools. A cultivator couldn't possibly use so many spirit tools. The only possibility was that he had obtained them from killing enemies. Of course, to Lu Yi, these things didn't have much use except for selling them to the Tianji Business Alliance in exchange for cultivation resources. The remaining things were useful to him. There were several bottles of healing pills and over 20 bottles of origin spirit pills. This person had the most things on him were spirit stones. Not only did he have mid-grade spirit stones, but he also had low-grade spirit stones, and there were even things that seemed to be high-grade spirit stones. There were so many of them, and the total amount was probably over 10,000 spirit stones. Lu Yi could be considered an experienced and knowledgeable person, but he really had never seen someone with such wealth. Disregarding everything else, 10,000 spirit stones was already a huge fortune. Even Lu Yi didn't have that. This could be considered to have solved Lu Ye's urgent problem. Originally, even if he bought a large amount of origin spirit pills from the Tianji Business Alliance, he wouldn't be able to last long. He was still thinking about where to go to find some cultivation resources. Now it was all good. He didn't have to worry about this problem for a short time. After transferring all the useful things into the storage space on the back of his hand, Lu Yi took out a copper plate from the storage pouch. The copper plate was about the size of a palm and looked ordinary. Lu Yi examined it for a long time, but couldn't figure out what it was used for. It was only when he poured his spirit energy into it that the copper plate suddenly bloomed with a ray of light. Then, Lu Yi faintly felt a guiding force from the copper plate. That force seemed to be pointing him in a certain direction. This copper plate seemed to contain some kind of secret. Lu Yi didn't know what was in the direction the copper piece was pointing, but from the current situation, if he followed the direction it was pointing, he would definitely be able to find something. Holding the copper plate, Lu Yi fell into deep thought. After a short while, he put away the copper plate. No matter where the copper plate was pointing to, the most important thing for him now was to increase his cultivation. Only by increasing his cultivation would he have enough capital to protect himself and roam the world. In front of the Tianji Business Alliance, Lu Yi landed and leisurely walked in. He found a steward and asked him about the entrusted delivery of the sword. After learning the whole story, the steward gave Lu Yi a solution. The Tianji Business Alliance here temporarily took care of the longsword. At the same time, they sent a message to the Xinxing sect, asking the cultivators of the Xinxing sect to come here and ask for the spirit sword. Lu Yi naturally agreed, but he only had one condition, and that was to not reveal his information to anyone. Chapter 453. After going back and forth like this, more than half of the night had passed. Lu Yi was hesitating whether he should simply stay in the Tianji Business Alliance for the night when a message suddenly came from the battlefield imprint. Lu Yi checked and found that it was a message from Shin Kitten. Her tone was very anxious. "Hurry back, the spiritual land is in danger." Lu Yi hurriedly replied, but there was no reply from Shin Kitten. He realized that something was wrong and hurriedly walked out of the Business Alliance. He took out his spirit boat and soared into the sky. It was not until the time it took for an incense stick to burn that there was another message from Shin Kitten. Lu Yi exchanged a few words with her and roughly understood the whole story. His heart was filled with shock. He never thought that things would turn out like this. He sped all the way. It was not until dawn that he arrived at the location where he had agreed to meet Shin Kitten. He landed, but he did not see any trace of Shin Kitten. He sent a message, but there was no response. He searched around and saw a few drops of blood on the leaves beside him. Lu Yi frowned and realized that Shin Kitten might not be in a good situation. Just as Lu Yi did not know where to find this woman, Hu Po, who was squatting on his shoulder, suddenly jumped down and walked in a direction with light steps. Lu Yi hurriedly followed. A moment later, in front of a dark cave, Hu Po stopped and let out a cry. Lu Yi lowered his body and went in. When he reached the innermost part, the strong smell of blood immediately rushed into his nose. At the bottom of the cave, an enchanting figure was lying in a pool of blood. Her face was pale and her breathing was light. Who else could it be but Shin Kitten? No wonder she did not respond when he contacted her earlier. This woman's injuries did not seem light. At this moment, she had already entered a coma. However, even in a coma, she could also sense that someone was approaching. She frowned, as if she wanted to open her eyes, but her consciousness was difficult to wake up, and her face was filled with pain. Lu Ye's expression was solemn. He checked Shin Kitten's injuries and found that her injuries were indeed quite serious. If he left her alone, it was very likely that she would die here. He took out some healing items from his storage space. Lu Yi shouted, help her heal her injuries." "Okay." Yi flashed out of Hu Po's body. She got busy. Lu Yi walked out of the cave. He began to set up a formation around the cave. Tonight's events were too surprising. He did not expect that he had only left the spiritual land for a short while. The spiritual land actually changed owners, and little Cat Shin was seriously injured. If this woman hadn't been vigilant enough, she would have been a corpse by now. Through the simple exchange with her before, Lu Yi roughly knew the whole story. However, he didn't have the time to ask about the details. It seemed that he could only wait for her to wake up. What was even more incomprehensible to him was, how did that person bypass the restrictions of the contract of divine secrets? Was there a loophole in the heavenly mystery contract? He set up a simple alarm and concealment formation. Lu Yi sat cross-legged at the entrance of the cave and took out the heavenly mystery contract. He carefully examined them one by one, but no matter how he looked at them, he didn't see anything that could be used in this divine secret contract. Many of the clauses on this divine secret contract were listed out by little Cat Shin. This woman was a meticulous person. Various clauses echoed each other from afar, clearly organized and logically meticulous, completely eliminating the possibility of being used by others. He couldn't understand. However, through this experience, Lu Yi had witnessed the viciousness of the human heart. This was something he had never seen on the Spirit Stream battlefield. On the Spirit Stream battlefield, there were more head-on killings. There weren't many schemes and tricks. He walked out of the cave. "Can I live?" Lu Yi asked as he put away the heavenly mystery contract. "It shouldn't be a problem, but with that kind of injury, no matter what, I'll have to recuperate for at least 10 days to half a month. As long as I can live." Lu Yi nodded. The sky was already bright. Lu Yi ate a little and took out a white spirit stick. He squeezed it hard. No matter what, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation. One spirit stick after another was consumed, until Lu Yi used up all the white spirit sticks and a green spirit stick. The long river of spirit power in his body suddenly shook, as if it had broken through some shackles. The scales suddenly expanded, and even the speed of the spirit power flowing in it became faster. Lu Yi felt comfortable all over. To be honest, the cultivation of the Cloud River realm had never been easy. Because the cultivation of the entire Cloud River realm was expanding the volume of the long river of spirit power in the body, so in the process of accumulating from quantitative to qualitative change, the long river of spirit power always gave people a sense of tension that had reached the limit. Until now, when he broke through, the tension suddenly disappeared. But this state was destined to not last long, because as Lu Yi continued to cultivate, the tension that had reached the limit would appear again until he broke through the next shackle. The second-order Cloud River realm. Lu Yi had never experienced such a rapid promotion since he started cultivating. Even when he was in the Spirit Stream realm, it took him 2 to 3 months on average to break through a small level. Most of the time, it took him about 3 months. But how long had it been since he broke through to the Cloud River realm? Only half a month. Breaking through a minor realm in half a month, if he could maintain this speed, it wouldn't even take him half a year to reach the 9th-order Cloud River realm. Of course, this was unrealistic. The reason why he could cultivate so quickly was mainly because of the spirit sticks. This thing could greatly increase a cultivator's cultivation speed. In addition, Lu Yi didn't have high requirements for world energy, so he mainly consumed spirit pills. This was why he could achieve the miracle of breaking through to the next level in half a month. In his hand there was a purple spirit stick, 2 blue spirit sticks, and 5 green spirit sticks. They could still help him break through to the second-order Cloud River realm, but he shouldn't be able to reach the third-order Cloud River realm. Since he was in the mood to cultivate, Lu Yi naturally continued to work hard. Time flew by, and 3 days later, Shen Xiaomao barely recovered. Although her injuries weren't completely healed, at least her life wasn't in danger and she could speak. The spirit sticks in Lu Ye's hand were also completely consumed. His cultivation didn't make any more breakthroughs, but he had taken a big step forward in the second-order Cloud River realm, saving a lot of cultivation time. In the depths of the cave, Lu Yi sat cross-legged in front of Shen Xiaomao. The latter lowered her head. The cave was dim, so Lu Yi didn't notice that Shen Xiaomao's face was flushed. It couldn't be helped. Her clothes had been changed. Not only that, many parts of her body had been carefully bandaged, especially some important parts. Shen Xiaomao naturally thought that it was Lu Ye's doing. She didn't blame him. After all, he saved her life. She tried to convince herself that cultivators didn't care about such trivial things, but she couldn't help but think about something else. Lu Yi held a bowl of water in his hand and gave it to Shen Xiaomao to drink. He then took out a piece of dried meat and handed it to her. Shen Xiaomao lowered her head and chewed slowly. It wasn't until a long time later that Lu Yi spoke. "Tell me, what happened?" Shen Xiaomao recalled the events of that night and gritted her teeth. Yuan Qingzhu planned it. That night, when Lu Yi was participating in the spirit stick auction at the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union, he still sent a message to Shen Xiaomao. At that time, nothing happened. It wasn't until the latter half of the night that Shen Xiaomao, who was cultivating, suddenly noticed something strange. Before she could investigate the situation, two strangers rushed into her house. Both of them weren't weak. In a big battle, Shen Xiaomao fought one against two. How could she be their opponent? She was seriously injured and fled. Before she left, she was worried about Yuan Qingzhu's safety and wanted to call her to escape together, but she found that this woman was standing outside quietly looking at her. In the end, Shen Xiaomao was chased by 3 people. If it weren't for a life-saving treasure in her hand, she would have died. In the end, she fled here and hid her whereabouts. After sending a message to Lu Yi, she fainted. When she woke up again, her injuries had already been treated. After that, she saw Lu Yi. What was certain now was that Yuan Qingzhu was in cahoots with those 3 strangers. Limited by the contract on the Heavenly Secret Contract, Yuan Qingzhu could only watch from the sidelines and couldn't make a move on Shen Xiaomao. Those 3 people were also let in by Yuan Qingzhu. Because it was Yuan Qingzhu's turn to be on duty in the latter half of the night, the jade pendant of the Great Array was in her hands. Otherwise, with the many arrays left behind by Lu Yi, those 3 people wouldn't have been able to sneak in quietly. I just don't understand how Yuan Qingzhu avoided the restrictions of the Heavenly Secret Contract and contacted those 3 people. There was clearly a clause in the Heavenly Secret Contract that prohibited the existence and location of the Spirit Land. However, Yuan Qingzhu avoided this clause and called over 3 helpers. Lu Yi had been thinking about this problem during his cultivation for the past few days. In the end, he could only think of one possibility. "You're right to say that she planned it," Lu Yi said. "After signing the Heavenly Secret Contract, she can't privately disclose the location of the Spirit Land. But what if she leaked it before signing the Heavenly Secret Contract?" Shen Xiaomao was shocked. "You mean, now that I think about it, when we first saw this woman that day, her hands were in front of her lower abdomen and tucked in her sleeves. I'm afraid that at that time, she had already used the battlefield imprint to send a message to the outside world. The reason why she waited for so many days before making a move was nothing more than waiting for a suitable opportunity. My leaving the Spirit Land was the best opportunity." Many of the arrays in the Spirit Land were arranged by Lu Yi. In Yuan Qingzhu's impression, Lu Yi was an array cultivator who was proficient in arrays. If he left, the power of the arrays in the Spirit Land would naturally be greatly reduced. Therefore, those people only needed to deal with Shen Xiaomao. The plan was perfect. If they hadn't underestimated Shen Xiaomao's background, Lu Yi would have seen a corpse at this moment. What a deep scheme! Shen Xiaomao was secretly horrified. Thinking back to her contact with Yuan Qingzhu these past few days, the other party affectionately called her sister. Normally, there was no clue at all. She became more and more afraid. Not to mention Lu Yi, who had just entered the Cloud River battlefield not long ago, even Shen Xiaomao, who had been in the Cloud River battlefield for a while, had never seen such a sinister human heart. Yuan Qingzhu, this woman, taught the 2 of them a solid lesson with practical actions. Chapter 454. Yi Lu, I'm sorry. In the cave, Shen Xiaomao suddenly spoke. I lost the Spirit Land because I wasn't careful enough. If I had discovered her sinister intentions earlier, we wouldn't have ended up here. On the Cloud River battlefield, Spirit Land was of great use to cultivators. Having a Spirit Land was of great help to one's cultivation. Shen Xiaomao was very glad that she met Lu Yi and was successfully taken in by him. She was already fantasizing about the scene of her cultivation rising steadily in the future. Unexpectedly, in just a few days, the spirit land was seized by sinister people, which made her feel annoyed and guilty. "You're a cat, how can you be a fox's opponent? Don't think too much about it. It's just a spirit land. If you lose it, then lose it. Saving your life is the most important thing. Then we're just going to let it go." Shen Xiaomao was obviously unwilling. "Heal your wounds first." Lu Yi glanced at her. A spirit land above 3rd grade and below 2nd grade wasn't too important to Lu Yi. It was good to have a spirit land, but without it, it wouldn't affect his cultivation. If those people fought openly and defeated him and Shin Kitten, then he would have nothing to say. The treasured land belonged to those who were capable. If his strength was not as good as others, what was there to complain about? Naturally, he had to work hard to improve himself and get back at them in the future. But taking advantage of his absence, they used some despicable means to seize the spirit land. This was a bit disgusting. Naturally, this matter wouldn't be settled so easily. What's more, Lu Yi was the first to discover the spirit land. The spirit array inside was also personally arranged by him. Now, there were many array flags and array bases left there. Not to mention other things, just a set of protective spirit arrays was worth 10 to 20,000 merit points. Leaving Shen Xiaomao in the cave to heal her wounds, Lu Yi took advantage of the night to summon the spirit boat and rushed into the sky. Shen Xiaomao was a 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. First, she was seriously injured in a 1 versus 2 battle. Finally, she escaped from the encirclement of 3 people. This showed that the opponent's cultivation wasn't too high. At most, they were 4th or 5th order. As for Ruan Qingzhu, she was only a 4th order, although Lu Yi was only a 2nd-order Cloud River Realm cultivator right now. Since he began cultivating, most of the enemies he had encountered had higher cultivations than him. There were very few opponents with the same or lower cultivation, so even if he was facing a few 4th or 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivators, he wasn't afraid. Ever since he had entered the Cloudy River battlefield, he had yet to truly fight with anyone. Actually, he really wanted to know the standards of these people on the Cloudy River battlefield. Half an hour later, Lu Yi had arrived at the periphery of the spiritual land. At this moment, as far as the eye could see, the area where the spiritual land was located was empty. Even if someone passed by nearby, if they did not carefully investigate, they would not be able to detect the existence of the spiritual land. This was because Lu Yi had not only set up a defensive array with 16 array bases, but also a concealment array with concealment spirit inscriptions as its core. The spiritual land wasn't big, and with his current attainments in Array Dao, he could set up a concealment array to hide the entire spiritual land and avoid a lot of unnecessary trouble. If there hadn't been a mole this time, the spiritual land wouldn't have been so easily seized. Lu Yi observed silently for a moment before landing 3 kilometers away from the spiritual land. He then activated his concealment spirit inscriptions to cover his body, concealing his figure as he quietly approached the spiritual land. After an incense stick worth of time, Lu Yi arrived at the periphery of the spiritual land. It was already night time, so there wasn't much movement around, only some insects and frogs croaking. With the insight spirit inscription in his eyes, the hidden spiritual land was immediately exposed, and the light curtain of the defensive array was clearly imprinted in his eyes. There were no traces of the array being altered. Lu Yi didn't know if there were any array cultivators among them, but even if there were, their attainments in Array Dao should not be as good as his. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used the array he had set up. Since this array was set up by Lu Yi, he naturally knew the operation of the array and the location of its node. Lu Yi threw a few formation flags at the grand formation, and with a burst of spirit energy, he lifted a corner of the grand formation and walked in leisurely. As Lu Yi put away the array flags and concealed himself, a figure suddenly rushed out from one of the houses. This person was holding the array jade pendant and was looking around vigilantly. He was obviously the person in charge of guarding the array. Although Lu Ye's movements when he sneaked into the array were small, it still alarmed him. Noticing this person's movements, a few more people walked out of their houses, including Ruan Qingzhu. "Junior Marshal Brother's son, what's going on?" asked a burly man with a big waist. The one who was called Junior Marshal Brother's son was the cultivator holding the array jade ring. He frowned and looked around. "The array seems a little strange." "What strange?" the burly man asked again, looking more vigilant. Junior Marshal Brother's son shook his head. "I'm not sure, but the array fluctuated just now." He turned to look at a tall and thin man. "Junior Marshal Brother Qing, check it." The tall and thin man, Junior Marshal Brother Qing, replied, "Okay." Saying so, he stepped forward and took the array jade ring from Junior Marshal Brother's son's hand. He poured his spirit energy into it, adjusting the array's power while carefully inspecting it. From this person's actions, this person should be an array cultivator. While Junior Marshal Brother Qing was inspecting the array, Junior Marshal Brother's son said, "Could it be that Shin Xiao Mao has returned?" The burly man said, "That woman was seriously injured. Even if she didn't die, it would be impossible for her to recover so quickly. Compared to that woman, I'm more worried about that array cultivator." Junior Marshal Brother Qing also said that the array cultivator's cultivation in the Tao of arrays is extraordinary. Junior Marshal Brother's son smiled. "Junior Marshal Sister Wan, didn't you say that the array cultivator was only a first-order Cloud River realm cultivator? He probably just entered the Cloud River battlefield. There's nothing to worry about." Because they had all signed the Heaven's Secret contract, Lu Yi had told Ruan Qingzhu and Shin Xiao Mao about his cultivation. When they learned that Lu Yi was only a first-order Cloud River realm cultivator, the two women were obviously surprised. Now that they thought about it, Ruan Qingzhu's surprise was somewhat meaningful. Shin Xiao Mao's surprise was because when she fought with Lu Yi for the spirit lot, she had a brief fight with him. She didn't expect him to be a first-order Cloud River realm cultivator. On the side, Junior Marshal Brother Qing carefully inspected the array and handed the jade slip to Cultivator Sunday. "There's no problem with the array. Perhaps there were some omissions when it was set up, causing the flow of spirit qi to become sluggish. Wait for me to inspect it again tomorrow." Hearing him say so, Cultivator's son felt relieved. The four people dispersed and went to their own rooms. Inside Cultivator's son's room, he sat cross-legged, holding the array jade slip in his hand and calmly cultivating. With the jade slip in his hand, he could sense all abnormalities within the array. This was also what the person on duty had to do. Time passed quietly. At a certain moment, Cultivator's son, who was immersed in his cultivation, suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. An inexplicable sense of danger enveloped him. His reaction wasn't slow. The moment he sensed that something was wrong, he opened his eyes. However, at that moment, an inexplicable force enveloped him, causing him to feel dizzy. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in a stone forest. He immediately looked around vigilantly. At a glance, he saw a figure 1,000 meters away. The person didn't look very old, about 17 or 18 years old. His head was slightly lowered, and his hand was on the hilt of his saber. Cultivator's son immediately shouted, "Who is it?" Compared to inquiring about the other party's identity, he was more interested in knowing where this place was. He was clearly in the Spirit Land's room, but in the blink of an eye, he was actually here. It was really difficult for him to understand. This stone forest was naturally the space inside the Nine Worlds diagram. When the four people from the Spirit Land opened their rooms to investigate the situation, he quietly sneaked into Cultivator's son's room. The reason why he chose this person was because the array jade slip was in his hand. Lu Yi needed to control the array jade slip immediately. Only then could he come and go freely. Otherwise, even if he was the one who set up the Spirit Land's array, it would take some effort for him to leave, just like when he sneaked in. The main reason why Lu Yi didn't take advantage of Cultivator Sun's cultivation to attack and kill him was because he couldn't guarantee that he could kill him in one strike. Moreover, even if he could kill him in one strike, he couldn't guarantee that Cultivator Sun wouldn't scream or make any other movements. Once that happened, the remaining 3 people would definitely rush over and the situation would be unfavorable for him. After all, Cultivator Sun's cultivation was higher than his, so using the 9 worlds diagram was undoubtedly safer. Since Cultivator Sun was caught off guard, the 9 worlds diagram took him in immediately. At this moment, in Cultivator Sun's room, Yi was controlling the 9 worlds diagram. She didn't dare to use her spiritual power too violently to avoid exposing herself. As a result, she could only barely maintain the operation of the 9 worlds diagram. She was unable to activate the 9 worlds diagram to help Lu Yi. In this battle, Lu Yi could only rely on his own strength. Within the 9 worlds diagram, Cultivator Sun shouted. When he didn't receive a response, he couldn't help but panic. Combined with his current situation, he recalled some rumors. Something that could instantly change a person's position was undoubtedly a very powerful treasure, such as a spirit artifact like an array diagram. If that was the case, then he should be inside an array diagram, but a Cloud River Realm cultivator possessing a spirit artifact. It was simply unimaginable. How powerful was his background to be able to possess a spirit artifact? One had to know that Cloud River Realm cultivators generally only used mid-rank spirit artifacts. While Cultivator Sun was still in shock, Lu Yi had already rushed towards him, spirit chi surging around his body. With Lu Yi's actions, his cultivation was undoubtedly exposed. Cultivator Sun flew into a rage. Second-order Cloud River Realm. Where did this reckless boy come from? A mere second-order Cloud River Realm cultivator dared to provoke him. Although Cultivator Sun's background wasn't very strong, he was still a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. The fear in his heart was replaced by anger. Raising his hand, he sent several Imperial artifacts towards Lu Yi. This guy was also a weapon cultivator. However, in the next moment, a scene that made Cultivator Sun tremble with fear appeared. He saw the young man on the other side raise his hand, and 9 streams of light shot out, chasing after the stars and moon. Their speed was extremely fast, and the sound of them breaking through the air rang out incessantly. With a series of clanking sounds, Cultivator Sun was surprised to find that his Imperial artifacts were no match for his opponent, whether in terms of numbers or power. In just a short confrontation, he was completely at a disadvantage. The other side's 9 spirit artifacts broke through the blockade of Cultivator Sun's spirit artifacts, spinning like a top as they shot towards him. Chapter 455. Within the 9 realms diagram, as Cultivator Sun saw the 9 streams of light rushing towards him, he hastily summoned his spirit artifact. It was a long staff. With the long staff in his hand, this person continuously pushed and slashed, sending the 9 Imperial equipment flying. However, the long staff was buzzing non-stop, and the hands holding the long staff were trembling slightly. The anger on his face was replaced by shock, and he immediately understood that he had encountered an incredible person. Originally, he didn't take Lu Yi seriously when he saw that he was only a second-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. However, after this exchange, he understood that this second-order Cloud River Realm cultivator's strength was far beyond his imagination. The Cloud River Realm was a realm where the gap between cultivators was huge. Some people reached the Cloud River Realm with 240 apertures, while others reached the Cloud River Realm with 360 apertures. In this realm, the difference in strength between cultivators of the same level was like heaven and earth. The sect that the cultivator surnamed Sun and the others came from was only at the 5th rank. None of them managed to break through to the Cloud River Realm with 360 acupoints. The best was the muscular man, who managed to break through to the Cloud River Realm with 312 acupoints. The cultivator surnamed Sun was even worse. He only managed to cultivate to the spirit stream realm with 290 acupoints before reaching his limit. It was difficult for him to open any more spirit acupoints. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were many cultivators like him. On the contrary, there were very few cultivators like Lu Yi, who reached the Cloud River realm with 360 apertures. Not to mention, Lu Yi was once the Spirit Stream realm's top disciple and had received 4 baptisms from Heaven's secret. When he reached the Cloud River realm, he was blessed by Heaven's secret. "I'm not his opponent." This thought appeared in Cultivator Sun's mind as soon as they clashed. As soon as he blocked the attacks of the 9 Imperial equipment, he was pushed back by the huge force. Before he could stand firm, Lu Yi had already arrived in front of him. A fiery red blade light flashed, and the long blade chopped down. Cultivator Sun's spirit artifact staff blocked this attack, but it also forced him to lower his body. The huge impact almost caused his staff to fly out of his hand. Without any time to breathe, the fiery red blade flashed down continuously. Blade after blade, it was like a violent storm. After the Mountain Plate Saber was promoted to a mid-grade spirit artifact, it was no doubt easier for Lu Yi to use. Cultivator Sun clenched his teeth to resist. He gripped his staff with both hands and placed it in front of him. Ding ding dang 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 sounds rang out incessantly and sparks flew everywhere. His body was constantly lowered. Suddenly, a saber appeared. Lu Yi didn't slash downwards, but instead stabbed out. Cultivator Sun saw this saber and wanted to block it, but his arms were already numb from the shock. How could he possibly block it? The long saber stabbed into Cultivator Sun's shoulder and came out of his body. Cultivator Sun screamed miserably. At the same time that Lu Yi pulled out his saber, he kicked out, sending the person in front of him flying and landing on the ground in a sorry state. Lu Yi didn't pursue Zhang Xian. Instead, he simply stood where he was with his saber pointed at the ground, a deep frown on his face. He was a little weak. He had originally thought that this would be a difficult battle, or at the very least an evenly matched fight. But as they fought, he discovered that this cultivator surnamed Sun was far inferior to him, whether it was in strength or reaction speed. He understood that when the person in front of him broke through to the Cloud River realm, the number of apertures he opened must not have exceeded 300. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a 4th-order Cloud River realm cultivator to be so weak. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." Cultivator Sun fell to the ground and stood up in a sorry state. He put some distance between himself and Lu Yi in fear and asked in a panic, "Is fellow Taoist the helper that little cat Shin invited? If so, please spare my life. My senior and junior brothers will immediately leave this place and never come back again." Lu Yi didn't say anything. He just raised his hand and showed him his battlefield mark. Cultivator Sun's face suddenly turned pale. Lu Yi understood that the other party was from the Myriad Demon Ridge camp. If the other party was from the Grand Heaven Alliance, Lu Yi wouldn't know whether to kill him or not. After all, he had received help from many Grand Heaven Alliance sects in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Since he was from the Myriad Demon Ridge, there was no problem. With the support of Windwalk, an afterimage appeared behind him. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi had arrived in front of Cultivator Sunday. He viciously chopped down with his saber, sending Cultivator Sun flying through the air. Blood splattered everywhere as a miserable scream rang out. Without waiting for him to land, Lu Yi had already followed up with another slash. This time, the scream came to an abrupt end. With 2 thuds, a head and a headless corpse fell to the ground. Blood dyed the ground red. Lu Yi called out softly as he sheathed his saber. In the next instant, a repulsive force came from all around him. His vision blurred, and he appeared in Cultivator Sun's room with a corpse beside him. Lu Yi bent down and put away the formation jade slit ring and Cultivator Sun's storage pouch. There were 4 of them, and he had already killed one of them. There was only one sturdy man left. He was a formation cultivator, Junior Marshal Brother Ching, and Ruan Qingzhu. How to kill them was a problem. Now, he couldn't easily sneak into their rooms. Even if he lured them out for a sneak attack, he would only be able to kill one of them at most. Among these people, Junior Marshal Brother Qing should be the easiest to kill. Since he was a formation cultivator, he would definitely spend a lot of time on the Tao of formations. His own strength might not be very strong. The sturdy man should be the hardest to kill. This guy's qi and blood were vigorous. He was clearly a body cultivator. Yi and Hu Pu should be able to tie down one of them for a while if they joined forces. Then, he had to kill two of them in the shortest time possible. Unfortunately, some of the formations he had set up in this spiritual land had already been broken. Otherwise, with the help of the formations, it wouldn't be a problem for him to fight 1 against 3. With a vague plan in his heart, Lu Yi quietly pushed open the door and flashed out. Hu Pu continued to stay in the room. Everything had gone smoothly just now, so Cultivator Sun's death didn't alarm anyone. Under the activation of the concealment spirit pattern, Lu Yi was like a ghost as he silently arrived in front of the sturdy man's room. Since this person was the hardest to kill, he would start with him. As long as he could get rid of this person, the remaining 2 wouldn't be a problem. Otherwise, if this person joined forces with the others, the situation would only be worse. After hiding well, Lu Yi was about to activate the formation Jade Slit Ring in his hand to make some noise to attract the enemy to come out and investigate. However, he heard a rumbling sound coming from outside the formation. Looking up, he saw a familiar figure standing in the sky. Who else could it be but Shin Kitten? She wasn't recuperating in the cave, but had come here for some reason. Looking at her expression, there was a faint trace of anxiety. The commotion just now was caused by her attacking the protective formation. Lu Yi took the opportunity to activate the formation Jade Slit Ring and closed the entire protective formation. Outside the spirit array, after Shin Kitten made her move, she watched as the protective formation covering the entire spirit land suddenly dissipated. The spirit land that was originally covered by the spirit array also appeared clearly in her field of vision. She had been recuperating in the cave before, but when she woke up, she didn't see any trace of Lu Yi. She thought that he had left her behind, but thinking about it carefully, it wasn't very likely. If Lu Yi really didn't want to care about her, he didn't have to save her and guard her for 3 days. Recalling the conversation with Lu Yi before, Shin Kitten vaguely sensed Lu Ye's intentions. Ignoring her injuries, she hurried to the spirit land to investigate. She didn't know if things were as she had guessed. If they were, Lu Yi might have come to the spirit land, but Lu Yi was just a first-order Cloud River Realm cultivator. His strength was quite low, so if he made a mistake, he might have been captured. That was why she attacked the protective formation to test it. No matter what, she and Lu Yi had signed a Heaven's secret contract to attack and defend together. However, something happened that shocked her. She just casually attacked and the protective formation disappeared. There were no traces of a fight, nor was there any trace of Yi Lu. Shin Kitten secretly cursed and wanted to leave quickly. But the movement was so big that it had alarmed the 3 people in the spirit land. The door was quickly opened and 3 figures rushed out. In the next moment, the burly man's vitality erupted as he turned around and punched out. A saber light flashed and an arm flew out, blood spurting out. Lu Yi, who had hidden himself, appeared, holding the mountain-coiling saber, his eyes drooping. The burly man staggered back a few steps, holding his severed arm, his eyes filled with disbelief. He didn't expect that someone would ambush him at the door of his room. If it weren't for his powerful perception, this saber strike would have killed him on the spot. Even so, one of his arms was cut off. Yi Lu. Shin Kitten, who had not yet recovered from her injuries, and Ruan Qingzhu, who saw this scene, exclaimed in unison. Junior Brother Qing was stunned for a moment before he reacted. His body flashed and he was about to rush towards Lu Yi, but Shin Kitten had already pounced on him and intercepted him. In terms of strength, Shin Kitten was undoubtedly stronger than junior brother Ching. If this woman wasn't lying, she was also a master who had once been on the spirit stream list. But at this moment, her injuries had not yet healed and her strength had been reduced. After a short exchange, she was not a match for junior brother Ching, who was an array cultivator. At this time, Lu Yi held the mountain coiling saber and wrapped the burly man in a fiery red saber light. Step by step, he pressed forward, not showing any mercy. If the other party was in good condition, this battle might have been a bit more difficult. The burly man's cultivation was at the 5th order Cloud River realm, and he was much stronger than Cultivator Sunday. However, he had lost an arm to Lu Yi and could not maintain the great cycle of his spirit energy, so his strength was greatly reduced. Facing Lu Ye's storm-like saber strikes, he could only dodge. On the other side, Hu Po had already rushed out of Cultivator Sun's room and revealed his true body, fiercely pouncing on Ruan Qingzhu. Yi did not appear for the time being, secretly looking for an opportunity to give Ruan Qingzhu a fatal blow. Screams rang out and blood splattered. Even if the burly man desperately summoned his spirit energy and blood qi, he could not resist Lu Ye's slashes. In just a moment, his body had been slashed more than a dozen times, blood and flesh flying everywhere. Junior brother Ching and Ruan Qingzhu were both shocked. Originally, Ruan Qingzhu would have no problem facing Hu Po, but at this moment, she was uneasy and could not escape from Hu Po's entanglement. She never expected that Yi Lu, who was only an array cultivator in her eyes and was only at the 1st order Cloud River realm, would be such a ferocious character. Also, where was senior brother Sun? Why was he nowhere to be seen? All kinds of questions and horror lingered in Ruan Qingzhu's heart. For a moment, she felt as if she had stepped into an abyss and her body could not help but fall. Chapter 456. Inside the Spirit Land, 6 figures were fighting each other, but the fiercest battle was undoubtedly between Lu Yi and the burly man. The sturdy man was a 5th order Cloud River realm body cultivator. Back then, he had broken through to the Cloud River realm with more than 300 apertures, so his strength was not just a little bit stronger than the cultivator surnamed Sunday. Even after being ambushed by Lu Yi and having one of his arms chopped off, he still had the strength to resist. Despite his injuries, he summoned a large shield spirit artifact and held it with his remaining hand, constantly blocking Lu Ye's saber and counterattacking from time to time. When the saber and shield collided, a huge force collided, causing spirit qi to surge and blood to boil. Seeing that ordinary slashes had no effect on this man, Lu Yi did not intend to delay any longer. With a slash, the 2 deadlocked figures suddenly separated. Lu Yi took 2 steps back and held his saber horizontally in front of him, assuming a fighting stance as his blood qi began to gather towards his right arm. Seeing this scene, the burly man suddenly felt a sense of danger and hurriedly rushed forward, his towering body and large shield slamming towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi leaped high into the air, his saber-wielding right arm swelling to twice its original size. Like an eagle swooping down, his saber chopped down. A flash. His right arm, which had already gathered his blood qi, evaporated into a layer of blood-red mist. Consecutive slashes. When the first slash fell, the burly man's eyes instantly widened as a violent force came from above and slashed his shield spirit artifact. Even though he was a body cultivator, he was still cut down by this slash. Before he could adjust his body, Lu Ye's second slash had fallen. The burly man directly knelt on the ground, the shield in his hand involuntarily smashing into the ground, creating spiderweb-like cracks. When the third slash fell, the spirit artifact shield flashed brightly. When the fourth slash fell, the dazzling light suddenly dimmed. The fifth slash, accompanied by a crashing sound, shattered the mid-rank spirit artifact shield with 18 spirit arrays. The sharp and heavy blade cut through the shield at the same time, cutting through the burly man's left shoulder and coming out from his lower right waist. His thick blood, chi, and protective spiritual energy couldn't block this violent slash at all. Like cutting tofu, this slash directly cut the muscular man in half diagonally. The burly man's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief as he stared fixedly at the youth in front of him. His lips wriggled as if he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. Lu Yi maintained the posture of the last strike. His right arm was trembling violently, and the pain of his flesh being torn apart came. When he was in the spirit stream realm, Yang Kai was only able to send out 3 slashes while in his flash state, but now that he was in the 5th order Cloud River realm, he could send out 5 slashes, and this was not his limit. If necessary, he could send out 1 more. However, every time he used this saber technique, the after effects were not small. Therefore, Lu Yi generally did not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. 3 breaths later, Lu Yi stood up and lifted his eyes to look at the other 2 battlefields. One of them caused him to be stunned. Hu Po was currently facing Ruan Qingzhu, and he was roaring at her with his mouth wide open. Ruan Qingzhu was bleeding from her 7 orifices, and her face was pale. She seemed to be severely injured. Did he make a move? However, Lu Yi did not feel the fluctuations of a technique, and he did not show any signs of appearing. It was impossible for Hu Po alone to beat a 4th order Cloud River realm cultivator into such a state. What's going on? He could not figure it out. However, he did not have the time to think about it. In the other battlefield, Shun Xiao Mao was struggling to resist junior brother Cheng. There were faint traces of blood on her body, and that was the result of her bandaged wound splitting open. Originally, junior brother Cheng had the upper hand, but the death of the burly man and Ruan Qingzhu's defeat made him panic. Seeing Lu Yi looking at him, junior brother Cheng did not dare to stay any longer. He immediately fainted and forced Shen Xiao Mao to retreat. His figure was about to soar into the sky. However, it was still too late. The weapon box at Lu Ye's waist buzzed, and 9 spirit artifacts shot out, sealing the space that junior brother Cheng could escape. Lu Yi himself rushed forward with his saber. Junior brother Cheng's strength was not very good to begin with. He was about the same as the cultivator surnamed Sun that Lu Yi had killed before. Against the heavily injured Shen Xiao Mao, he was still able to hold his own. Now that Lu Yi was added to the mix, how could he be a match? Even escaping became an extravagant hope. A moment later, the screaming junior brother Cheng also fell into a pool of blood. His body twitched a few times, and he stopped breathing. Only then did Lu Yi turn around and walk towards Ruan Qingzhu. Seeing him walk over, Ruan Qingzhu, who was leaning against a courtyard wall, was very flustered. She instinctively wanted to escape, but her injuries seemed to be not light. After struggling for a while, she could not get up at all. Shen Xiao Mao, who was covered in blood, also followed. The 2 of them, one on the left and one on the right, looked down at the fellow Taoist who was their ally a few days ago. Ruan Qingzhu still looked pitiful. She looked at Shen Xiao Mao with tears in her eyes and said softly, "Sister, don't call me that. You don't deserve it." Shen Xiao Mao's eyes were cold. 3 days ago, if she did not have some ability, she would have been killed by those people. At this moment, how could she have any sympathy? Ruan Qingzhu smiled. "Okay, then I won't call you sister. This time we miscalculated, but so what? We have signed the divine contract. You can't hurt me or kill me. Aren't you going to let me go?" Shen Xiao Mao gritted her teeth, her face full of unwillingness. Lu Yi lowered his head and checked his battlefield mark. A message came. It was from Yi, who was hiding in the dark. After reading the message, Lu Yi understood why Ruan Qingzhu was like this. This woman was suffering from a backlash from the divine contract. In the divine contract that the 3 of them signed, there was indeed a clause that forbade them from hurting each other. Hu Po was Lu Ye's pet, so this clause was naturally applicable. So when Hu Po jumped out to stop Ruan Qingzhu and Ruan Qingzhu attacked him, she immediately suffered a backlash from the divine contract. This backlash seemed to be very serious. Otherwise, a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator would not be unable to even run away. With Hu Po's strength, how could he beat Yuan Qingzhu to such a state? It turned out that it was a backlash from the divine contract. Looking at it this way, it was a wise decision to let Hu Po fight Yuan Qingzhu. But what Lu Yi did not understand was why Hu Po did not suffer a backlash. The divine contract's restrictions should be two-way. Yuan Qingzhu attacked him and suffered a backlash, so should Hu Po. But now, it seemed that only Yuan Qingzhu suffered a backlash. Lu Yi sent a message to Yi and after receiving a reply, he raised his brow. If the two of you have nothing else to say, then I'll take my leave. Yuan Qingzhu looked fearless and was about to stand up. Although the backlash was severe, she had recovered some strength after gasping for breath for such a long time. Lu Yi stepped forward and unsheathed his mountain ascending saber, a fiery red light flashing. "No!" Shen Xiaomao shouted. She had been in the Cloud River battlefield for much longer than Lu Yi and was well aware of the horror of a backlash from the divine contract. It could be said that after signing the divine contract, the three of them could no longer hurt each other. However, Lu Ye's saber was so fast that by the time she shouted those words, Lu Yi had already shaken off the blood on his saber and sheathed it. In front of him, Yuan Qingzhu's eyes filled with horror. Her body, which had just stood up, stiffened. She stretched out her hands to cover her neck, blood flowing from between her fingers. She looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. She really did not expect that under the divine contract's restrictions, Yi Lu would dare to attack her so decisively. Indeed, he would die under this saber, but would Sixth Leaf survive? I will wait for you on the road to the Yellow Springs. After Yuan Qingzhu finished speaking, she fell straight down, her head separated from her body. Shen Xiaomao still looked at Lu Yi in horror, afraid that something bad would happen to Lu Yi. But after waiting for a long time, Lu Yi did not show any signs of a backlash. This stunned Shen Xiaomao. She hesitated and said, "You're fine." It did not make sense. She was the one who laid out the terms on the divine contract. The people who signed the divine contract could not hurt each other. Yi Lu killed Yuan Qingzhu like this. How could he not be affected by the divine contract's backlash? But in fact, the young man standing beside her was indeed safe and sound. Lu Yi only dared to slash out with his saber after asking Yi. Yi had been hiding in the dark, so she saw everything clearly. In the confrontation between Hu Po and Yuan Qingzhu, only the latter was affected by the backlash. Hu Po was completely fine. Since Hu Po would not be affected by the backlash when he attacked Yuan Qingzhu, Lu Yi felt that his master should not be affected by the backlash either. As for why, Lu Yi did not know. He only vaguely felt that it had something to do with the divine blessing. No matter what, Yuan Qingzhu had already done something that destroyed the common interests of the three people. Although she did not make a move against Shen Little Cat and Lu Yi from the beginning to the end, those three people were her fellow disciples. She had entered this spiritual land with evil intentions. She was not benevolent, so she could not blame others for being unjust. If it was anyone else, they might not be able to do anything to Yuan Qingzhu and could only let her go. But Lu Yi was someone who had received the divine blessing. In front of the fair and just divine blessing, he would more or less have some special treatment. "Yi Lu, are you really okay?" Shen Xiaomao was still confirming Lu Ye's condition. "I'm tired," Lu Yi said as he walked to the side and found a stone to sit down, putting the mountain blade aside. Although today's battle did not last long, using the continuous slash-sword technique in the state of one flash at the end had taken a lot of toll on him. His right arm was swollen at the moment and would need 2 or 3 days to recover. This could be considered Lu Ye's first real battle since entering the Cloud River battlefield. Thinking back to the confrontation with the enemy, he suddenly realized that with his current foundation and strength, he could kill any ordinary 4th or 5th order cultivator. If anyone underestimated him because of his 2nd order Cloud River realm cultivation, they would definitely suffer a loss. He had long heard that the gap in strength between the Cloud River realm was huge. Now it seemed that it was true. In the battle with the burly man, he did not need to use his trump card. He only wanted to end the battle quickly to avoid any complications. Yi Lu, if you feel uncomfortable anywhere, don't hide it from me. You must tell me. Shen Xiaomao was worried and reminded him again. Lu Yi glanced at her. Take care of yourself first. Chapter 457. The spirit land that had changed owners for 3 days was reclaimed. Lu Yi and Shen Xiaomao were recuperating. The previous battle had made Shen Xiaomao's already serious injuries even worse. After this battle, she didn't know how long it would take for her to recover. Lu Ye's situation was better. He only suffered from the aftereffects of using his saber technique and recovered in 2 days. He rearranged the various spirit arrays that had been destroyed and closed before. After the incident with Ruan Qingzhu, neither of them had the idea of recruiting new members for the time being. Shen Xiaomao healed while Lu Yi cultivated in peace. However, after the experience of using the spirit lot to improve his cultivation, Lu Yi always felt that his current cultivation speed was a bit slow. There was a saying, "I can endure the darkness until I see the light." It was the most appropriate to describe Lu Ye's mood at the moment. He wasn't unaware of the taboo of cultivation, but he couldn't help but recall the feeling of using the spirit lot to quickly improve his cultivation. Shen Xiaomao's injuries gradually improved and she could go out. After the previous incident, Shen Xiaomao's impression of Lu Yi had undoubtedly changed a lot. She thought that Yi Lu was just a newly promoted First-Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, but she didn't expect that he had quietly broken through to the Second Order and had the ability to kill enemies above his realm. Several 4th or 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators were killed by him. Shen Xiaomao understood that with such a powerful background, Yi Lu was definitely not an unknown person when he was in the Spirit Stream realm. What she didn't understand in particular was that Yi Lu didn't suffer any backlash after killing Ruan Qingzhu even though he had clearly signed the Heaven's Secret contract. During the past few days of recuperation, she had been recalling the various terms she had listed, but she couldn't find any loopholes in them. She thought to herself that Yi Lu might have some special means to avoid being monitored by the Heaven's Secret contract. She wasn't too worried that he would use this method to deal with her. If Yi Lu really wanted to deal with her, he wouldn't have saved her before. Although they hadn't known each other for long, Shen Xiaomao felt that Yi Lu was still a trustworthy person. 5 days later, Shen Xiaomao personally cooked some good dishes to entertain Lu Yi. It was to celebrate the two of them regaining the spirit land and to thank Lu Yi for avenging her. At the dining table, Shen Kitten raised her glass frequently. She drank until her little face was red. She seemed to be in a good mood. Not only did she drink, but she also toasted to Lu Yi. Lu Yi drank until he had a big headache. In the end, he simply ignored this woman and focused on eating. "Yi Lu, let me ask you something." Shen Kitten's eyes were blurred. "Speak. Why didn't you tell me when you came to attack the spiritual land? Are you afraid that I'll be in danger?" Lu Yi raised her eyes to look at her. She really wanted to ask, "Don't you know what the situation was at that time?" But before he could say anything, Shen Littlecat had already planted her head on the table. For a 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator to be able to get him drunk was truly a miracle. After a short while, Lu Yi was full of wine and food. He stood up and walked to Shen Xiaomao's side to push her. The woman just waved her hand casually and mumbled something in her mouth. After that, there was no movement. Lu Yi frowned and put his hand on Shen Kitten's waist. He grabbed her forcefully and lifted her up. He carried her back to his room like a bag and threw her on the bed. Then, he left and closed the door. In the dark room, Shen Xiaomao suddenly opened her eyes. Her drunken eyes flashed with a trace of clarity. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she whispered softly, "He's reliable." Although it had been a few days, she still couldn't forget the scene when she woke up in the cave a few days ago. All the wounds on her body were carefully bandaged, including some places that were difficult to talk about. Although she kept convincing herself these days that he was saving her life, she was still a woman after all. She would always care about such things. She didn't know what happened when she was unconscious. Today, he deliberately got her drunk just to test her. The result proved that although Yi Lu's temperament was a little dull, he was still a reliable person. From this, it could be seen that he didn't do anything unnecessary when he bandaged her wounds. Her mood was even better. In Lu Ye's room, Yi came out of Hu Po's body and sat in front of Lu Yi. Stare. What? Lu Yi was puzzled. That woman did it on purpose. Yi's cheeks puffed up. What on purpose? She deliberately got herself drunk and she wasn't completely drunk. How did you know? Lu Yi was surprised. Anyway, it's like that. She. Yi clenched her small fists and her face turned red. She forced out a sentence. She was seducing you. Lu Yi was surprised. Really? Yes. Yi nodded her head like a chicken pecking rice. Lu Yi, I'm telling you, don't drink alone with a woman in the future. There are many bad women out there. In short, you have to be careful. After saying that, she gritted her teeth. Damn it, if I had known, I would have let her die in that cave. Why did I save her? Yes, I know. Be careful next time. Lu Yi nodded seriously. In her heart, she was annoyed. If she had known, she would have pushed the boat with the current. Shen Xiaomao had a big chest. The next day, Lu Yi was cultivating and reading in her room when she suddenly heard Shen Xiaomao's exclamation from outside. Who is it? It was followed by the sound of a big fight. When Lu Yi pushed open the door and walked out, she saw Shen Xiaomao and Yi facing each other from a distance. Both women looked vigilant. Lu Yi was stunned. Yi didn't want to show herself in front of others. Usually, she would only show herself in front of people she was familiar with or when she was alone with herself. Because Yi always felt that she was Lu Ye's trump card and would not be easily exposed. But this time, she actually took the initiative to show herself in front of Shen Xiaomao. It seemed that what happened last night made her very vigilant. Yi Lu, she's a magic cultivator. Shen Xiaomao hurriedly reminded Lu Yi, but she didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, from the situation of the fight, Yi's strength was not as good as hers. But what made Shen Xiaomao puzzled was how this little girl sneaked into the spiritual land without anyone noticing. In the past few days, because she had not recovered from her injuries, Lu Yi was in charge of controlling the array jade pendant and was responsible for guarding. The array itself was set up by Lu Yi, so there was no reason for someone to sneak in without noticing. This is my sister. Yi. Lu Yi stood at the door and introduced. She changed her name and surname, so did Yi. Shen Xiaomao wondered if she had heard wrongly. She looked at Yi and then at Lu Yi. When he nodded in confirmation, she put away her hostility and smiled awkwardly. So it's your sister. I thought someone had sneaked into the spiritual land. She turned to look at Yi. Sister Yi? Sister has been rude. Yi turned her head arrogantly and walked into Lu Ye's house. Shen Xiaomao. She suddenly realized that Yi Lu's sister didn't seem to be very easy to get along with. What made Shen Xiaomao even more puzzled was how Yi Lu's sister found this place. According to the agreement on the Tianji contract, neither party was allowed to reveal the existence of the spiritual land to others in private. This little girl named Yi shouldn't have come here. Did Yi Lu really have some special means to avoid the surveillance of the Tianji? But what kind of magical means was this? Shen Kitten realized that her intuition was right. Sixth Ye's younger sister was indeed difficult to get along with. She could clearly feel that the little girl had a lot of hostility towards her. Occasionally, when they met, the little girl would ignore her when she talked to her. What Shen Kitten was concerned about was that the little girl was actually living in the same room as Yi Lu. She understood that this was probably not a biological sister. No wonder she was so hostile towards her. After realizing the truth of the matter, Shen Kitten also paid attention to it. In the room, Lu Yi said earnestly, Don't be so obvious. We're both living under the same roof, so we'll see each other often. What? I want to keep an eye on you for Sister Hua Si. Yi said confidently. What does that have to do with Huazi? Lu Yi was speechless. How is it not related to Sister Hua Si? You and Sister Hua Si even have a child, Lu Yi was shocked. Don't talk nonsense. Your Sister Hua Si and I are innocent. You said it yourselves. Sister Hua Si even called you the father of the child. You didn't even refute it. Yi shook her head at Lu Yi proudly. Lu Yi sighed sadly and looked out the window. Why isn't Giant Armor here yet? She had sent a message to Giant Armor when she entered the Cloudy River battlefield. In the end, it had been almost 20 days and Giant Armor was still nowhere to be seen. If she had known that he wouldn't come over for such a long time, she would have just asked for a Tianji pillar in the spiritual land to let him return to Jojo. After occupying the spiritual land, one could ask for a Tianji pillar. However, the cost was very high. Lu Yi had inquired before. A Tianji pillar cost 20,000 merit points. Moreover, it was the kind that couldn't be taken away. In other words, if the spiritual land was occupied by someone, the 20,000 merit points would be for the other party to spend. However, if there was a Tianji pillar in the spiritual land, it would be convenient to do some things, such as buying and selling things from the Tianji treasure house. Generally speaking, in the Cloudy River battlefield, only large or medium-sized spiritual lands that could accommodate dozens or more people would ask for a Tianji pillar. It was convenient for cultivators to travel between Jiuzhou and the Cloudy River battlefield. Moreover, if the 20,000 merit points were shared among dozens of people, each person wouldn't have to bear too much. For the small spiritual lands occupied by Lu Yi and Shin Kitten, it wasn't worth it to ask for a Tianji pillar. The cost was too high for two people to share. Moreover, they might face the problem of spiritual power exhaustion. Once the spiritual power was exhausted, the spiritual land would be wasted. Ever since Yi appeared, Shin Kitten lived in seclusion. She often couldn't be seen for a day or two. Until one day the earth trembled and buzzed incessantly. It was as if thunder was swimming underground. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Lu Yi thought that someone was attacking the spiritual land and quickly jumped out of the house to investigate. However, there was no one outside the formation. The door of the room next to him was also pushed open. Shin Kitten's enchanting figure appeared. She asked with a serious expression, "What's wrong?" Lu Yi shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. This abnormality lasted for a long time before it suddenly calmed down. Shin Kitten seemed to have sensed something and rushed into the sky. She stood in midair and looked into the distance. Then, she became excited and shouted down, "Yi Lu, the opportunity is here!" Chapter 458. The Spirit Stream Battlefield, the Cloud River Battlefield, and even the entire 9 states had many opportunities. It all depended on whether the cultivators could encounter them. In comparison, the opportunities in the Spirit Stream battlefield were mostly inheritances, while the opportunities in the Cloud River battlefield were mainly to increase a cultivator's strength. The Heavenly Spirit lot was also a kind of opportunity. Almost every day, there would be a Heavenly Spirit lot in every corner of the Cloud River battlefield. This was also the opportunity that cultivators welcomed the most because they did not need to take too much risk to have the opportunity to obtain tangible benefit. However, the Heavenly Spirit lot was not the only kind of opportunity. There were also various mystic realms. The Spirit Stream battlefield also had mystic realms. The Immortal Essence City that Lu Yi had been to before was a mystic realm. There, he had obtained a large amount of soul-cleansing water. There were many mystic realms in the Cloud River battlefield. Some mystic realms even opened at a fixed time and location. Every time this happened, a large number of cultivators would gather outside the mystic realms. There were also some mystic realms that required cultivators to use special methods to open. There were also some that appeared randomly in various parts of the Cloud River battlefield. Those who were fated could enter. For example, in front of him, at the end of his field of vision, a pillar of light shot into the sky, piercing through the clouds. Even from hundreds of miles away, it could be seen clearly. In the sky above the spiritual land, Lu Yi and Shen Kitten stood side by side, looking at the pillar of light that pierced through the sky. They knew that the commotion just now was caused by this pillar of light. What is this? Although Lu Yi had bought a lot of information about the Cloud River battlefield from the Tianji Business Alliance, he had not been in the Cloud River battlefield for long. Naturally, he was not as knowledgeable as Shen Kitten. It should be a kind of mystic realm. I'm not sure what kind it is exactly. However, no matter what kind it is, there are still benefits. Let's go take a look. But the spiritual land, don't worry about it. There's a concealment array. If ordinary people don't check carefully, they won't be able to find it. Even if we lose it, we can just snatch it back later. As Lu Yi said this, he called out to the people below. Yi and Hupa hurriedly followed and took out the spirit boat. They turned into a stream of light and flew in the direction of the pillar of light. Shen Kitten could only follow. She was also very interested in the pillar of light over there, but she could not bear to leave the spiritual land behind. For a cultivator like her who mainly relied on absorbing the spirit chi of heaven and earth, a spiritual land was stable. It was very important to have a stable spiritual land. Even if the spiritual land was not B-grade, it could still save her a lot of cultivation time. However, this was not the case for Lu Yi. To him, the spiritual land was extremely precious. It wasn't very useful, but it was the icing on the cake. It didn't matter if he lost it. Last time, if Ruan Qingzhu and the others had not been so despicable, Lu Yi would not go so far as to go back and snatch the spiritual land back. Looking from afar, the beam of light was not close at all. They sped along the way. He realized that it was indeed not close. It was about 300 to 400 miles long. By the time Lu Yi and the others arrived at the scene, the pillar of light had already converged somewhat, leaving behind only a light screen that was over 100 feet tall. The multicolored light was distorted. If one were to observe it carefully, they would be able to see there were also scenes flashing from time to time. From those scenes, steep mountains and precipitous ridges flashed past, and there were also the figures of unknown cultivators flying across the sky. There were also some birds and beasts. Many cultivators had already gathered around. Most of the cultivators were staring at the distorted light screen with great interest. Lu Yi looked around. There were already 200 to 300 cultivators gathered here, and as time passed, more and more cultivators continued to gather. Judging from the spirit energy fluctuations coming from these cultivators, the strength of the people who came was mixed. There were Cloud River 8th or 9th order cultivators. There were also those who had just broken through to the Cloud River 1st or 2nd order. Suddenly, Lu Ye's gaze fixed on one person. It was a woman in purple with an indifferent expression. As if sensing something, the woman in purple followed his gaze. Their eyes met, and the woman nodded slightly at Lu Yi before withdrawing her gaze. Lu Yi also shifted his gaze away without a trace. He didn't expect that. To meet this woman again so soon. Be careful, this is a large sealed world. Just as Lu Yi was looking around, Shen Xiaomao suddenly came over and exhaled. What do you mean? I've been to this type of sealed world before. The environment inside is very complicated. It's almost a real world. And after entering, everyone will be given a new identity. Who gave it? Heaven's secret. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Things with Heaven's secret were never simple. Lu Yi couldn't help but be interested in this sealed world. If his previous speculations were correct, then he, who had been blessed by Heaven's secret, would receive some special treatment under the influence of Heaven's secret. What can you do inside? Do something that suits your new identity? The last time I entered a sealed world, My identity was a spy from a sect who infiltrated an enemy sect. I was looking for an opportunity to steal that sect's guarding treasure. Wasn't that very exciting? Don't mention it. I almost died inside, but in the end I still succeeded. What were the benefits? That sect rewarded me with a lot of cultivation resources, including a few spirit sticks. Lu Ye's interest was even stronger. Looking at the entire Cloud River battlefield, if there was one thing he was most interested in right now, it would undoubtedly be the spirit sticks that could rapidly increase one's cultivation. I don't know if we'll be together after we enter, but you're just a second-order Cloud River realm cultivator, so no matter what your status is inside, you must be careful. We can still communicate with each other inside, so if we're separated and you have any questions, just send me a message. Got it. Time passed, and gradually, more and more cultivators gathered. In less than half a day, there were more than a few hundred cultivators gathered in a 10-kilometer radius. One had to know that this was the Cloud River battlefield, not the Spirit Stream battlefield. In comparison, the Cloud River battlefield was much larger, and the cultivators were more scattered. More than 600 Cloud River cultivators had gathered in such a short time. It was obvious how attractive this sealed world was to cultivators. Although there were many people, no fighting broke out. The cultivators who arrived here were all eyeing the sealed world, and no one wanted to cause trouble. At this time, the 100-meter-tall light curtain began to distort into an oval-shaped light gate. The chaotic fluctuations gradually calmed down. Through the light gate, one could vaguely see the beautiful scenery on the other side, as if there was really another world on the other side. "We can enter," someone suddenly shouted. In the next moment, cultivators in twos and threes rushed into the light gate. The number of cultivators outside gradually decreased. Lu Yi, Yi, and Shen Xiaomao also waited for a moment before entering the light gate together. At the same time, a large amount of inexplicable information uncontrollably flowed into Lu Ye's mind. This feeling was very similar to when he was investigating the spirit patterns on the leaves of the talent tree. His thoughts suddenly became muddled. Lu Yi tried hard to maintain his consciousness and organize the information in his mind. The myriad beast realm was a world where cultivators and monster beasts coexisted. Because of the uniqueness of this world, a large number of monster beasts lived here. The beast taming school, which was not commonly seen in the 9 continents, shone here. Most cultivators were proficient in the beast taming art. They grew up with monster beasts from a young age, and then had their own monster beasts. Due to the restrictions of this world, the highest cultivation level of cultivators here was only the Cloud River realm. No cultivator had ever broken through the shackles of the Cloud River realm to reach the true lake realm. Originally, this was a peaceful world. Although there were many beast-taming sects and conflicts, they did not affect the stability of the entire world. However, things began to change a year ago. An inexplicable disease began to spread in the myriad beast realm. This disease did not affect cultivators, but only monster beasts. However, monster beasts that went crazy became extremely bloodthirsty and difficult to control. The realm of beasts, which was dominated by the beast-taming school, suffered a heavy blow. Not only were the cultivators who used the beast-taming school as their main means of cultivation greatly weakened, some Yao beasts even turned on their masters, biting and killing their masters who had grown up together with them. For a time, the cultivators of the myriad beast realm were in a state of panic. In just a year, the entire cultivation world was turned upside down. Almost all the sects that used the beast tamer school as their main force were destroyed. The peaceful world had undergone a great change. Now, in the realm of beasts, only a dozen sects that didn't use the beast tamer school as their main force were still struggling at death's door. They formed an alliance of cultivators to fight against the demonic beasts that had gone crazy. If even the cultivator alliance formed by a dozen sects couldn't stop the crazed beasts, then the entire cultivation world of the realm of beasts would be destroyed. When that time comes, the realm of beasts will become the world of the beasts, and the human race will no longer have a place to live. Now, the remaining cultivators of the dozen or so sects gathered in a city called Two-World City. Aside from cultivators, there were also many mortals living in the city. They were the only humans left in the myriad beast realm. At the same time, the monster beasts also set their sights on the last stronghold of the human race. After sorting out the chaotic information in his mind, Lu Yi suddenly opened his eyes. He heard the sound of something breaking through the air, and the scenery around him quickly retreated. Lu Yi found himself in a flying spiritual tool. This was a medium-sized flying spiritual tool that could accommodate 3 to 5 people. A faint fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. It was the fragrance of a woman. Before Lu Yi could completely recover, he heard a familiar voice calling him, Yi Lu. Following the voice, Shin Kitten's pretty face appeared in front of him. This woman was with him, and they were not separated. Not only was Shin Kitten with him, but there were also 2 other women. One of them was actually Lan Zi. Lu Yi did not know the last one, and he did not know who she was. 3 pairs of eyes stared at him. Lu Yi rubbed his temples, and he felt a headache coming on. This was the first time he had entered this kind of secret realm. According to the clues and information he had sorted out before, just as Shun Kitten said before, he was now given a new identity by Tianji, the young master of the Myriad Beast sect. Heaven's secret had indeed given him preferential treatment. The identity of young master was undoubtedly something that ordinary people could not obtain. Shun Xiaodong, Lan Zi, and even the girl that Lu Yi did not know were all his maids in this secret realm. Chapter 459. On the spirit boat, Lu Yi looked at the 3 women in front of him, and a surreal feeling rose in his heart. He knew that he was Lu Yi of the Jade Blood sect, but the identity given to him here constantly reminded him that he was the young master of the Thousand Beasts sect. The Thousand Beasts sect was the most powerful sect in the entire realm of beasts. Before the disease that made the beasts go crazy spread, the Thousand Beasts sect was the true overlord of the world, and all the forces in the realm of beasts had to look up to them. However, after the disease spread, every sect that used the Beast Tamer school as its main force suffered heavy losses and then fell apart. The Thousand Beasts sect was no exception. Although they held on until the end because of their strong foundation, they could not avoid the fate of being destroyed. 3 days ago, the Thousand Beasts sect fell under the attack of countless beasts. Almost 80% of the sect's disciples died in battle, and the survivors scattered, preparing to take refuge in Two-World City. Lu Yi and the other 3 were among them. At this moment, the 4 of them were on their way to Two-World City, and there was still more than half a day's journey to Two-World City. As the young master of a sect that dominated an entire world, Lu Ye's current status was undoubtedly very honorable. However, this sect had been destroyed 3 days ago, leaving Lu Yi somewhat speechless. Now, his honorable status had undoubtedly been greatly reduced. However, when he thought about Shen Xiaomao and Lan Zi's identities, Lu Yi felt a lot better. Yi was not here, and neither was Hu Po. Lu Yi hurriedly used the battlefield imprint to send a message to Yi, asking about their current situation. A moment later, he received a reply from Yi. Hu Po was currently in a city, but he was in a state of imprisonment, and there were many other beasts imprisoned with him. Yi was not clear about the situation, so she did not dare to act rashly, because the cage that imprisoned them was very strong, and Hu Po could not break it with his strength. In the city, the only safe city in the entire realm of beasts was Two-World City, so Yi and the others were most likely in Two-World City. Lu Yi sent a message to Yi not to act rashly, and to wait until he arrived, and Yi naturally agreed. "Be careful." A low cry came. It was the woman whom Lu Yi did not know who was warning him. As soon as she finished speaking, violent collisions came from the side. Lu Yi hurriedly turned his head to look. There were more than 10 huge figures around the spirit artifact they were in. They were all demonic beasts of different shapes and sizes. Every demonic beast's eyes had a sickly scarlet color. This was a sign that the demonic beast was ill. At this moment, there were a few demonic beasts that were crazily attacking their spirit tools. In the blink of an eye, the air transportation spiritual artifact shattered. Lu Yi and the other three hurriedly summoned their spirit tools and soared into the air. A loud explosion was heard. The air transportation spiritual artifact exploded. He was on his spirit boat. The weapon box at Lu Ye's waist buzzed. 9 imperial artifacts rushed out. Turning into a stream of light, he slashed towards the nearest demonic beast. At the same time, Shen Xiao Mao and the other 2 girls also used their own method. For a time, the light of the imperial equipment and the power of the spells were continuously released. Spiritual energy surged. Although the strength of these demonic beasts was not bad, as a whole, they were not strong enough. It wasn't to the point where Lu Yi and the others were helpless. Following the 4 people's actions, blood splattered everywhere. One by one, the demonic beasts were beheaded, their corpses falling from the sky. After a fierce battle, all the demonic beasts that were chasing after them were killed. The 4 of them turned into 4 streams of light and rushed forward. Among them, the woman that Lu Yi didn't know contributed the most. It was because the cultivation she displayed was the highest, almost at the 8th or 9th order Cloud River realm. In addition, what Lu Yi was concerned about was that Lan Zi's strength was also at the 2nd order Cloud River realm. He could reach the 2nd order Cloud River realm so quickly. It was because he had obtained a lot of spirit sticks during this period of time. Lan Zi must have done the same. It seemed that Boundless Island attached great importance to Lan Zi. Otherwise, how could she have so many spirit sticks to use? Just as he was thinking this, the woman that Lu Yi didn't know suddenly said, "Introduce yourselves. We may have to work together after this." Heaven's Secret had arranged the 4 of them together. Obviously, he wanted them to help each other. If not, this woman would have left long ago. Because from her point of view, Lu Yi and Lan Zi's 2nd order Cloud River realm cultivation was too low. Shen Xiao Mao's 5th order Cloud River realm cultivation was barely enough. But they shouldn't be placed together with her, a 9th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Since Heaven's Secret had arranged it this way, there must be a reason. Yi Lu. Lu Yi reported his name as usual, but did not mention his origin. Shen Xiaomao. Lan Zi. The 9th order Cloud River realm woman nodded slightly. Then, she said, Xia Qian Qian. After exchanging names, they knew each other. Throughout the whole process, whether it was Shen Xiaomao or Lan Zi, Lu Yi didn't show any signs of knowing them beforehand. The same was true for Shen Xiaomao. From an outsider's point of view, the 4 people present were strangers who had never met before. Then let's talk about our respective tasks. Heaven's Secret has given us new identities, and correspondingly, he has also given us some missions, Xia Qian said as she looked at Lu Yi. Tell me, what is your mission? Lu Yi thought for a moment and looked down at his right hand. On his right thumb, there was a jade ring. What was certain was that he had never seen it before. Combining all the information that had surged into his mind, Lu Yi understood. He waved his jade ring at the 3 women and said, "Take some of the 1,000 Beast Sect's assets and find the 2 world cities' city lord. Find a place for the survivors of the 1,000 Beast Sect." This was the mission that he, as the young master, had to carry out at this moment. This jade thumb ring was a very valuable storage item, and at the same time, it was proof of Lu Ye's identity. "What about you 3? Lu Yi looked at the 3 women. "Protect you," Shen Xiaomao was the first to respond. "Protect you." Lan Zi looked at him indifferently. Xia Qian smiled but didn't say anything. Lu Yi knew that her mission was to protect him as well. The former 2nd place of the Spirit Stream list, an ally who had signed a Heaven's Secret contract with him, and a 9th order Cloud River realm cultivator. This combination wasn't too weak. Coupled with Lu Yi himself, this lineup was enough to deal with most troubles. Heaven's secret treated him quite well. Little friend, what kind of good deed have you done to make Heaven's secret value you so much? A meaningful look flashed across Xia Qianqian's eyes. I've been in and out of this type of sealed world many times, but I've never met a fellow Taoist who has been given such a high status by Heaven's secret as soon as he enters and has 3 beautiful maidservants to protect him. I'm lucky? Lu Yi raised his brow. Xia Qianqian chuckled and didn't comment. Suddenly, she looked at the jade ring on Lu Ye's hand with great interest. Can you open it and take a look? See if there's anything good inside. Isn't it inappropriate? Lu Yi hesitated. The responsibility that Tianji had given him was to bring this item to Two World City and give it to the city lord. Then, he would find a place for the survivors of the Thousand Beasts sect to stay. He could imagine that there would be a lot of good things in this jade ring. It doesn't matter if you take a look, Xia Qianqian urged. Shen Xiaomao and Lan Zi also stared at him. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment before nodding. I'll just take a look. Saying so, he poured his spirit qi into the ring, but there was no response. There's a seal. Let me see if I can open it, Lu Yi said as he carefully examined the seal's structure. The result was extremely surprising. The seal's structure was complex beyond his imagination. After a moment, he shook his head. No, I can't open it. He could open it by force, but doing so would most likely destroy the storage space inside the jade ring. The 3 women withdrew their gazes in disappointment. Xia Qianqian said dispiritedly, forget it. Since it's a gift from Heaven's secret, it won't be easy to open. Shen Xiaomao said, Sister Xia, you're the strongest and have been to many sealed worlds like this. What advice do you have? Tell us, and we'll pay more attention in the future. She was obviously asking for Lu Yi and Lan Zi. 2 second-order Cloud River Realm cultivators obviously didn't have much experience in dealing with sealed worlds. Xia Qianqian said, there's no need for advice. The situation in every sealed world is different, so the methods to deal with it are naturally different. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that everything in this sealed world is real, and everything has happened in the past. Lu Yi frowned. What do you mean? Xia Qianqian pursed her lips and smiled. Literally. Lu Yi thought for a moment. What fellow Xia means is that what we're experiencing now has happened in this world before? Exactly. Why do you say so? I can't prove it, but it's true. I used to think it was impossible, but you'll naturally understand after experiencing it many times. Perhaps somewhere in this world, there was a myriad beast realm that suffered a great calamity and was destroyed. Then, the so-called Heaven's secret used some mysterious method to refine it into a secret realm and placed it in various parts of the Cloudy River battlefield, allowing us to enter and train ourselves. There are many similar sealed worlds in the Cloud River battlefield, and you'll encounter many more in the future. If that's true, then how could there be monster beasts left after the realm of beasts was destroyed? The ones we just killed. How can you be sure that the monster beasts you killed were real? Maybe they were created by Heaven's secret to deceive you? Lu Yi was a little confused by her words. Just as she was about to ask again, Xia Qianqian said, Okay, I'm not going to ask you anything. I just want to tell you that Heaven's secret is unfathomable. If you die here, you're really dead. Maybe one day when we reach the Spirit Sea realm, we'll gradually understand the truth of this world, but for now we just have to do what Heaven's secret wants us to do. As the saying goes, follow Heaven's secret and good fortune will follow. Lu Ye's heart shook. The truth of the world. He'd heard this once before, when the suppressed true dragon in the dragon's spring told him. The true dragon told him to find him after he knew the truth of the world. If what he saw was not the truth of the world, then what was the truth?